Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're heading straight into the lonely stretches of Texas highways, those long, empty roads where the air feels colder, the shadows stretch farther, and the strange things people see out there. They stay with them forever. These are 4 of the creepiest things ever found on empty Texas highways, and trust me, every one of them will make you think twice the next time you're driving alone under that wide Texas sky. But before we dive in, let me warn you about something unsettling. Most viewers make one simple mistake. They watch the video and leave without subscribing. And when they do that, they miss the darkest, most chilling stories we uncover here on the channel. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what we're about to explore tonight, it's only the beginning. The highways get darker the longer you stay, and so does the truth behind what people have seen out there. So tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now where you are? Drop it in the comments. Because out here in Texas, the night never really ends, and the horror waiting beyond the headlights is ready to unfold. Now, let's get back on the road. Let's dive into the darkness. I do not drive that highway at night anymore, and I know people say that kind of thing all the time, but I mean it in a way that makes my hands shake just thinking about it. My name's Kyle Mercer. I'm from a little place outside Junction, just a cluster of mailboxes and double wides off the old road. And I work as a parts runner for a diesel shop that keeps ranch trucks and feed haulers alive. And that night was just supposed to be another late run, so my boss could promise a rancher his truck would be ready by sunrise. It started so normal that it feels wrong now. When I try to remember it, I clocked in at 7:12 inches the evening. I remember the time because I checked the old punch clock twice. I had on that gray shop shirt with my name patch crooked over the pocket and a dark ring where the collar never really comes clean. And I had a bacon and egg burrito from the gas station off Main that always tastes like the wrapper, but it fills you up. I topped off the shop truck, a white 3/4 ton with a toolbox in the back and a rattling fan belt we kept saying we would fix. I checked the tires, checked the coolant, wrote down the mileage like I always do. It was just me that night. The other driver called in sick. The boss said if I took 377 out past the river and cut across the farm to Market Road, I could shave 20 minutes off and still be back before 2 in the morning. I remember thinking that was fine. I had done late runs plenty of times. The kind where the radio keeps you company and the yellow lines slide under you until your eyelids feel heavy, but you know the road and the road knows you. That is how it felt when I pulled out like the road, and I had an understanding, and I am telling you, it did not feel like I was driving into anything strange. The sky was clear, not a storm cloud anywhere, just a thin slice of moon and a lot of stars. The kind of sky you only really see when you get away from town. The air had that dry chill it gets out here when the heat finally dies off, the kind that smells like dust and cedar and somebody burning brush a few properties over. I had a bottle of gas station coffee in the cup holder, the kind with the lid that never fits right, so you drink careful. The radio was on low, some old country station fading in and out as I got farther from town, and my head was full of boring things. The way the rancher always chewed sunflower seeds, the way my boss kept promising a raise but never said when. I was thinking about how I needed new wiper blades, about how the driver door window whistled above 50. Nothing about that first hour felt like a story. And I guess that is important because when the first wrong thing happened, I did not notice how wrong it was at first. I just filed it away as another weird little detail from a late drive. I was maybe 40 minutes out, past where the houses thin out and the barbed wire fences seem longer and the reflectors along the road get sparse. I had just passed a busted billboard that used to advertise some water park hours away, just a faded family, frozen mid-splash, when my headlights picked up a shape on the right shoulder, a person walking along the white line, and my first thought was simple, just that someone had car trouble or a fight with whoever they were riding with. I let off the gas a little, not braking hard because you learn not to jump on the brakes out there in case someone is riding behind you with their lights off. I clicked off the high beams and back on again. Just habit, and that is when my brain stopped thinking normal and started stuttering without me really understanding why. The figure resolved in the light. It was a woman, or at least it looked like a woman by the build. Jeans and some kind of dark jacket, hair down around the shoulders. but she was facing away from me while moving toward the edge of the lane. Her feet were pointed toward the field, toward the fence line, but her whole body was coming toward the road like somebody had picked her up and was sliding her backwards on a track. I remember saying out loud, "What are you doing?" before I was even close enough to really see her. My hands tightened on the wheel. I tried to make sense of it. I told myself she must have been turning around, stepping sideways. Maybe I caught her mid-step. There were 100 normal explanations, and my head tried all of them in the 2 or 3 seconds it took me to draw, even with her. I drifted a little toward the center line to give her room, and that is when the hair on my arm stood up, because she did not even flinch when the truck came beside her. No glance, no hitch in her shoulders, and her feet. I keep coming back to the way her feet moved. They were stepping in a steady, measured pace toward the field, but her body did not follow the way it should. It just rolled backward toward me, and then I was past her and my mirrors caught nothing but darkness, and I told myself it was fine, that people walk weird sometimes, that I was tired. I turned the radio up a little and kept going, my heart thumping harder than it should for something so small. I checked the rear view once, twice, 3 times, nothing behind me but the ribbon of my own headlights on the road. It was one of those things you try to shrug off, but it sticks. Like a seed caught in your sock, 10 miles maybe. That is as far as I got before I saw her again. I know the distance because I watched the mile markers. I remember thinking I should have been close to that picnic area with the 2 crooked tables and the busted trash can. But when I passed the next marker, it read a number I swear I had already seen. And that feeling of something not lining up started pressing on my chest. The road curved a little, dipped, and when I came around that dip, there she was, again, same side of the road, same distance from the white line, same slow backward drift toward where my truck would pass. Jeans, dark jacket, hair hanging down, head tilted slightly like she was listening for something under the dirt. I hit the brakes that time. Not enough to skid, but enough to pull me down under 40. My heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I was not close enough yet to see details, but every part of me knew it was the same woman, the same walk, the same wrongness, and I started talking out loud. I do that when I get nervous. I said things like, all right, hold on. And man, this is not funny. And listen, maybe she got ahead of me somehow. Maybe there was a pull-off I did not notice. My brain threw out every excuse it could. Maybe there are 2 women out walking at midnight on a farm-to-market road in the middle of nothing, wearing the same clothes and moving in that same strange way. I knew how ridiculous that was, but the other option felt worse. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. The truck felt smaller around me. When I drew close enough this second time, I told myself I would slow and ask if she was okay. I remember reaching for the window switch, the busted one that stuck halfway, but just as my finger brushed it, something inside me yelled no, so loud it felt like a voice that was not mine. My foot stomped on the gas instead. The truck lurched, the engine whined, and I shot past her again. This time I saw her more clearly. I saw the way her arms hung at her sides, loose but not quite right, too straight, like there were no elbows, and the way her head stayed turned away from me completely. No profile, no glimpse of a cheek, just an ear and hair and the barest hint of skin at the edge of my headlight beam, pale and flat. And then she was behind me again, swallowed by the dark. I drove faster than I should after that, the yellow line trembling past, the road noise louder, my eyes flicking between the speedometer, the rear view, and the black patch ahead. I kept expecting headlights behind me, another car, a truck, something to prove the world was still turning the way it was supposed to, but there was nothing, not even a distant glow from a ranch house. Just my 2 cones of light and the night pressing against them. My mind kept trying to count the mile markers, to prove I was making progress, but they stopped matching what I knew. The numbers did not go the way they should. I would see one, then drive what felt like 5 miles before I saw the next, only for it to be off by 1 in a way that made me doubt. I had seen it right. My gas gauge seemed to be dropping faster too, like the drive was longer than it should have been. The radio crackled in and out, stations overlapping, voices half heard, the kind of chatter you usually ignore, but then a voice came through clear as anything. A man saying she is ahead of you again in this calm tone that did not sound like any DJ. And then static swallowed it. I snapped the radio off so hard, the knob clicked 2 spots, told myself it was just my head playing tricks, that I had misheard some ad. I checked the clock on the dash and blinked because more time had passed than made sense. What should have been an hour or so out felt closer to 3 by the display, and I knew that could not be right. I had not been on the road that long. I know what an hour feels like in my bones. I tried to call the rancher to tell him I might be late, just to hear a human voice. But my phone screen stayed stuck on the lock screen, the time frozen at 11:23 no matter how many times I tapped it, the signal bars jumping from full to none to some little X I had never seen before. And that is, when I saw her a third time, I came over a slight rise, and there she was again. Exact same spot on the shoulder, same distance from the white line. Like someone had copied and pasted her onto the road, only this time she was closer to where my beams hit. And I could see more than before. I remember my breath going shallow. I remember thinking, if I close my eyes, I will crash, but if I keep them open, I have to see her. I started praying under my breath in that clumsy way you do when you cannot remember the words exactly. Just little pieces, like please help me and I do not want to see this again. I tried to tell myself I would stop, I would do the decent thing, roll down the window, ask if she needed help, tell her I could call someone, but my hands were locked on the wheel and my right foot might as well have been nailed to the floor. I could not make myself do it. My body had already decided. As I closed in that third time, the beams caught her full on, and the first thing I noticed was that her hair was not really moving, not in the way it should with her walking. It hung around her head like it was wet or stuck together. The second thing was her jeans, dark but with this lighter patch around the knees that looked rubbed out, and then my lights rolled up high enough that there should have been a face, and there was not. Just a smooth stretch of skin from hairline to chin, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, like someone had taken a photo and blurred out everything important. The skin was too pale, not bloody, not torn, just wrong, like plastic warmed by hands. And even though there was no mouth, I felt this certainty that she was screaming, that if I rolled down the window, the truck would fill with the sound of it. My chest hurt so bad I thought I might pass out. I yanked the wheel a little to avoid her, even though she was not stepping into the lane, and the truck tires kissed the center line. I heard the rumble strip buzz, the rear end swayed. For a second, I thought I would lose it and end up in the ditch, but I kept it straight, and then she was behind me again, and I knew, in a way that made something in me go cold and still, that I was not just seeing the same woman 3 times along one trip. I was seeing the same moment trying to press itself over my life again and again until it fit. I do not know how else to say it. I drove the rest of that stretch, barely breathing, my eyes burning from not blinking, my shoulders locked. I do not remember turning down the ranch road, but I must have, because the next clear thing in my memory is the yard light over the barn, swinging in the wind, and the rancher coming out in his pajama pants and boots, asking me why I was so late. I looked at the dash clock and it said 4:06. The drive should have been 2 hours there, maybe 2.5 taking the back road, but somehow I had lost almost 5. My gas tank was lower than it should have been, like I had driven twice the distance, and when I climbed out, my legs shook so bad I had to lean against the truck door for a second. The rancher asked if I was sick, if I had eaten something bad. I tried to tell him what I saw, and the words dried up in my mouth. I could not make my tongue say it. It sounded too strange. I just mumbled something about nearly hitting a deer and getting turned around. He clapped my shoulder and told me to grab some coffee before heading back. Said he did not need me wrapping the truck around a mesquite tree. I went inside his kitchen. I remember the way the linoleum was curling at the corners, the smell of old coffee and fried food, the tick of the clock over the doorway, all those normal things, and it almost fooled me into thinking I had imagined it. On the way back, I took the longer way on purpose, the one that loops through town and adds 45 minutes. I did not care. I stayed where the lights were, where the houses had porch bulbs glowing, where I could see the blue of televisions and living room windows, anything but that stretch again. When I finally pulled into the shop lot, the sun was just thinking about coming up, the sky going from black to a deep dark blue. I parked, shut off the engine, and just sat there, my hands still on the wheel. I remember feeling like if I took them off, something would grab them from behind me, like someone was in the back seat waiting for that moment. It took a full 5 minutes before I could make myself look around. Of course there was nothing, just the empty seat and the faded bench. But the feeling stayed, that buzzing under the skin like I was not alone. The next part is where it gets worse, in a way I did not expect. Because you would think the seeing her 3 times would be the peak, but what hooked into me and stayed was what happened after. My boss came in around 7. Same as always, coffee in one hand, folder in the other, complaining about invoices. He asked how the run went, and I lied, said it was fine, long but fine. He grumbled about the mileage being higher than he expected when he checked the log, but he let it go. Later that morning, when things were slow, I pulled the truck into the bay and hooked up the dash cam to download the footage. We started using dash cams after one of the guys hit a stray calf, and the rancher tried to say it was his fault. I told myself I just wanted to make sure there was nothing weird on the recording, something to prove I was tired or saw a trick of the light, something I could look at and say, see, it was nothing. The screen on the little unit came to life. The files chugged across in their little timestamp blocks. I fast-forwarded until I hit the stretch where I first saw her. The road appeared on the screen, washed out by the headlights, the edges softer than in real life. I watched the white lines slide by, my own hands on the wheel, occasionally ghosting in at the edge of the frame. My heart sped up as we approached the shoulder where I remembered her, and there was nothing, no woman, no figure, just the empty road and the blur of grass. I told myself I must have misjudged the spot. I scrubbed ahead to where the second and third times happened. Each time the same, nothing there, just the road, the fence posts, the darkness. My knuckles went cold. That buzzing in my skin got louder. I almost turned it off. Part of me did not want to know anymore. But then the screen glitched in this small, almost gentle way, like someone had tapped it, and the image jumped back a few seconds on its own. I did not touch the controls. The truck rolled forward again, the white line glowing, and I watched as a shape faded into being on the shoulder, like she was bleeding through from underneath the recording instead of in front of it. First just a shadow, then legs, jeans, the dark jacket, and then the head turned away from the camera, moving in that wrong backward way. My breath caught. The little speaker on the unit hissed softly, and the rest of the sounds dropped out. No engine, no road noise, no radio, just this thin tone like something whistling through a crack. The image held on her as the truck drew closer and closer, even though I knew the dash cam should not have been able to look anywhere but straight ahead. But it was like the frame refused to move until she was centered in it. Her hair hung wrong. I could see now that it was not hair at all, but something laid over where hair should be, like strips of fabric or maybe shadows. I still cannot put a clean word on it. Then the camera jumped forward, and she was right at the edge of the hood. Too close, closer than she ever was when I really drove past. And for a fraction of a second, the angle changed, like something else was looking, and I saw her face, or where a face should have been, smooth and blank and pale, except this time there was a dent there, a shallow dip in the middle. And inside that dip, the image stayed black even when the headlights flared, like the light would not go in. I hit the stop button so hard I nearly broke it, my hands shaking. My boss yelled from the office, asking if I dropped something heavy. I told him the file was corrupted, that we needed a new card. He shrugged it off, said those cheap things never lasted, and that was the end of that as far as he was concerned. But not for me. I thought maybe if I did not talk about it, if I treated it like a bad dream, it would fade. People like to say that talking makes it real. So I kept my mouth shut. I took shorter runs. I made excuses to stay off that stretch. But Texas is big, and there are only so many roads, and sometimes you do not get to choose. A few weeks later, a highway patrol officer came by the shop, just checking inspection stickers and chatting. He knew my boss. They grew up near each other. They were talking about wrecks and drunks like they always do, and I do not know what made me ask. Maybe it was the way the officer looked at the trucks, like he was measuring all the ways they could crumple. I waited until my boss went to answer the phone, and then I said, quiet, "Hey, can I ask you something weird?" He shrugged and said, "Sure." He had heard plenty. I told him without details that I had seen someone walking on that stretch of road by 377 late, 3 times in one night. Same person, and it did not feel right. He studied me for a second, like he was deciding how serious I was, and then he asked if she was walking backward. Those were his exact words. And I felt this weight drop through me, like an elevator suddenly moving. I had not said that part. I know I had not. My mouth went dry. I nodded and said, yeah, she was. He sighed, looked toward the bay door where the sunlight was coming in, and then he told me they get calls sometimes, mostly from truckers passing through, sometimes from locals who will not leave their name, people talking about a woman out there who walks that way, who never turns around. He said years back there was a hit and run on that stretch. Some woman walking along the shoulder after a fight at home. The driver never came forward. They found the body the next day, laid out neat just off the white line like she had decided to lie down. He said that was the story anyway. But he did not sound like he believed his own words. Then he did this thing where he straightened up and his voice went official again, told me to watch my speed and stay awake on the road, all the usual stuff, and I could tell that was all he was going to give me. I wanted to ask if he had seen her himself, if he had watched the dashcam footage from his own cruiser and seen that same blank place where a face should be, but I could not get the words out. He left. My boss came back. Life went on, but something in me had shifted, like a bone that healed wrong. I started taking the long way home from anywhere, adding miles just to avoid that direction. I stopped driving after dark unless I had no choice. And even in town, with streetlights and other cars, I would catch myself checking the sidewalks for someone walking with their feet going one way and their body another. I flinch now when I see someone on the shoulder, even in broad daylight. My foot hesitates between the gas and the brake. I pay attention to mile markers in a way that feels more like superstition than habit. I check the clock too often, afraid it will be stuck on some impossible time again. I have not looked at that dashcam file since. I tell myself I erased it, that I formatted the card and there's nothing there. But sometimes when I walk past the truck after we close up, when the lot lights buzz overhead and the shadows fall strange around the tires, I swear I can hear the little unit click on by itself, just the smallest sound, like something inside it waking up, and I walk faster to my own car without looking back. People ask why I turn down night shifts when the pay is better, why I will not cut across that back road even when it would save gas. I tell them I am getting older, that my eyes are not what they used to be, that I prefer staying closer to town. All those normal reasons that let the conversation move on. But the real reason is that there's a patch of highway out there where time does not behave, and neither do people or whatever is left of them. And I am scared that one night I will misjudge. I will be a little more tired, a little more curious. I will ease off the gas instead of pressing down. I will roll down the window instead of locking it. And when I draw even with her, she will finally turn around, and whatever is on that smooth, blank place will look back at me and decide it wants to ride along. And if that happens, I do not think I will ever make it back to town at all. My name's Cody Ramirez. I'm from outside Eden, out past the pecan orchards off 87, and I work as a night driver for a parts warehouse over in San Angelo, and I am sitting on the back steps of my trailer right now, and my hands will not stop shaking. So if my voice sounds messed up, you will just have to deal with it, because I have to get this out, man. I swear to God I have to say it out loud at least once, or I am going to lose what is left of my mind. It is 3:10 in the morning. I am still in my work jeans. I have not even taken my boots off. There is this little rust spot on the right toe where I kicked the same piece of rebar at the yard 3 nights in a row, and I keep staring at that instead of looking out toward the road. Because if I look out toward the road, I start seeing him again, but I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the part of the day that still made sense. That morning I got up at 7 because my little boy climbed on my chest and told me the cartoons were too loud and that the milk tasted weird, and he wanted cereal with the other milk, the one in the red jug. And my wife yelled from the kitchen that was the same milk, just a different jug. And I remember standing there by the counter in that faded blue shirt with the white paint on the sleeve, the one that has my name stitched on a patch that is starting to peel up at the edges, frying 2 eggs in a pan that sticks on one side. The left one always sticks first, and the toast burned on one corner because my toaster leans, and I scraped it with a knife and ate it anyway. I remember that because on the drive later, I kept thinking about that burnt taste for no reason. Like my brain grabbed onto that as something normal. I poured my travel mug full of that cheap gas station coffee we buy in big cans, 2 scoops too many so it comes out strong and bitter, put a lid on it that does not quite match. You have to twist it twice, or it leaks. I kissed my wife on the head while she was trying to get peanut butter open. She told me the light on the porch was flickering again, and I said I would look at it tomorrow, and now I hate that. I said tomorrow like that was just something you could count on. I grabbed my keys from the little bowl with all the screws and dead batteries, and I headed out. I remember checking the time when I got in my old pickup. It was 8:43. The weather was that cold that does not look like anything. No fog, no rain, just this dry sting on your cheeks. The sky was this flat, pale color. No clouds that I can remember, just empty. I had a long shift scheduled, run parts up toward Abilene, back through a string of little towns most people only know from exit signs, then drop the truck back at the warehouse after midnight. That was the plan. That was all it was supposed to be. I clocked in at the yard at 8:59. The time clock still has that little bubble in the plastic cover. You smack it and it rattles. I remember thinking about that stupid bubble like I always do. I signed the sheet for truck 12. That is the ugly white box truck with one blue door because somebody backed into a pole years ago and they replaced the whole door from a junked one. The seat foam leans to the right. The radio only gets 2 stations without static. I did my walk around like we are supposed to. Checked the tires, the lights, opened the back door, looked at the pallets, all neatly wrapped, numbered in black marker. Abilene, Clyde, Baird, little repair shops, farm supply, one guy who always orders more than he needs and then sends half back. It was all boring, regular, like any other run I have ever done. And that is why this is so messed up, because there was nothing strange at the start. The only thing that stood out at all was the stain. It is stupid, but I dropped a little dollop of mustard on my shirt when I stopped at the first Allsups to grab a burrito at around 10:15. I checked the clock when I pulled in. I can see it in my head. Digital red numbers, 10:15. I took my first sip of fresh coffee there, tasted burnt again, and I laughed to myself because I thought my whole day was just gonna taste like burnt breakfast. I wiped the mustard with one of those thin napkins that tear if you press too hard. It smeared into this weird yellow shape just under my name patch, and I remember thinking, I should not show up to the Abilene shop like that, or they would make jokes. So I kept my jacket zipped most of the day to cover it. Dumb little things like that. That is what is still clear. All the regular stuff is clear. It is the middle part where everything turns soft around the edges. I ran my deliveries in order. Abilene around noon. The guy there signed my handheld and complained about a price increase. Clyde at 12:40. The woman at the counter had a Christmas wreath already up, even though it was the first week of December and the fake berries were falling off. Baird at 1:20. The owner's dog always barks until you hand him one of those cheap dog treats. I keep a bag in the truck just for him. That dog was fine. That town was fine. Every place I stopped was just another shop with the same calendar on the wall and the same coffee pot, burning old coffee down to mud. Nothing was wrong in the daylight. Not one thing. The highway up there, 20 and 153, and the little farm roads, they all look the same, as they always do. Scrubby trees, fence lines that lean, cows that stare, a dead deer every so often, that flat winter sun that does not feel warm, even when it hits your arm through the glass. I kept thinking about my kids' field trip the next week, wondering if I could get the day, wondering about Christmas gifts. It was just ordinary. I need you to understand that I do not want you thinking I am somebody who goes looking for this kind of story. I am not. I am the guy who shows up, loads the truck, delivers the boxes, goes home. That is all I have ever tried to be. So when I tell you that stretch of 153 between Winters and Coleman is wrong now, I mean it. But that first afternoon, it was not. The wrong part started later on the way back, and I can pin it to 1 point on the clock and 1 point on the odometer, and that is when everything started to unhook. I finished my last official drop around 7:30 in Coleman. The sky was already full dark by then. Winter does that. It cheats you on the daylight. I remember that because I said something about it to the guy at the last shop. I said, feels like it ought to be 10. He said, yeah, man, these winter days are a ripoff. I laughed, signed his paper, climbed back into the cab, and checked my route. My dispatcher had tacked on a pickup, a call in from some farm equipment place someone forgot to schedule, out on a farm road off 153. I had never been there, but it was not far. you take 153 out of town, then a smaller road, dirt turn in, grab a crate of something, bring it back to San Angelo on the way. That was it. The note said pick up by 8:30 latest. I checked the time on the dash, 7:42, no problem. I keyed the address into my phone, laid it on the seat, and pulled out. The highway was quieter than usual. Or maybe I am just remembering it that way because of what happened, but I keep going over it in my head. I did not see many cars after I got past the edge of town, just my headlights on the road, the white lines sliding under me, the radio low, some preacher talking on AM about end times. I turned him off because his voice was making me sleepy. I rolled the window down a crack and that cold air pushed in. It smelled like dry grass and that dusty smell you get near cotton fields. And for a little while it was just that. Me, the truck, the road, miles ticking by exactly how they are supposed to. I remember the green sign for a little county road. The number started with a 2, 276, or 274. I am not totally sure. I remember thinking I should remember it in case my phone lost signal. I passed a cluster of mailboxes, all leaning different ways, and one of them had Christmas lights taped around it. Not plugged in yet, just hanging. There was nothing off about any of it. I checked the clock again at 8:04 because I was thinking about the pickup time. And then, between 8:04 and 8:10, everything shifted, and I do not know how to explain it in a way that does not sound crazy. But I will just tell you straight, listen, this is the part where my hands start to shake worse. I was coming up on another little county road sign. I could see it coming out of the dark in my headlights, and just before I reached it, I saw him on the shoulder, walking in the same direction I was going, his back to me at first, then he turned a little as my lights came up on him, and he held his arm out, not like a full stick your thumb out like in a movie, more like a tired little wave, like, hey, over here. And I wish I could say I felt something right then, some chill or some warning, but I did not. He just looked like a man who had been walking too long. He had on a brown jacket that looked thin for the cold, jeans, boots that were dusty up past the ankles. He had a backpack slung over one shoulder, not even a big one, more like a school bag. And there was something about the way he was hunched that made me think of my uncle walking home when his truck broke down years ago. The way you lean into it when you are tired. I slowed without thinking about it. I really did. Every story I heard about not picking up strangers went right out of my head. All I could think was, it is dark and cold, and there's nothing out here for miles. If that was me or my kid, someday I would hope somebody would at least roll down a window. That is how it starts. Man, with one little thought like that, I put my blinker on, even though there was no one behind me. Habit, I eased onto the shoulder, gravel rattling under the tires. I watched him in the mirror. He did not speed up. He just kept that same slow walk until I came to a stop, a little ahead of him, and then he angled toward the passenger side. I leaned over and popped the lock up. The inside handle on that side sticks sometimes. You have to lift it twice. I called out the way you do when you want to sound casual. Hey man, you need a ride somewhere. And he said, sure, if you are headed west. His voice sounded normal. His voice did not give anything away. It was a little dry, a little tired, but there was nothing strange in it. No echo, no weird tone. I remember that very clearly. Because I keep telling myself, if his voice had sounded wrong, I would have driven on. I swear to God, I would have. He opened the door and climbed up, and the dome light came on like it always does. That dull yellow light that makes everything look worse. And that is when I noticed the first wrong thing. The very first one, and it was small. So small that if I had just kept driving and not thought about it, maybe none of the rest would have happened, but I did see it, and I did think about it, and I pushed it down instead of listening to my gut. When he stepped up, the light came on above us, and I saw him clear. He looked to be maybe late 30s, hard to tell under that kind of light, short, dark hair, a face that was not remarkable in any way, not scars, not tattoos, just one of those faces you forget. His jacket was zipped up to his chin, and there was dust all across his shoulders, like he had walked along the shoulder for a long time, and trucks had thrown grit on him. His jeans had a frayed line at the back of one cuff. His boots were scuffed, the things you would expect. But his body did not do the one thing everybody does under a light like that. He did not throw any kind of shadow onto the seat or the door or the floorboard. Mine did. I could see the line of my arm on the steering wheel. I could see the shadow of my own head on the cab ceiling. But him, he was just there, lit up. And then past him, there was nothing. The light hit his jacket and then went on. The seat beside him did not change. There is always a little patch of darker fabric when you are blocking the light, but it looked the same as it did when the seat was empty. I stared for maybe 2 seconds, thinking I was tired, thinking my eyes were dry. I blinked and leaned back, and when I looked again, the light had gone off because the door was closed, and it was just the glow of the dash and the road ahead. And in that light, everything looked flat anyway. So I told myself I had been seeing things. I told myself it was nothing. I said, "You are tired, Cody. Focus on the road." The man buckled his seatbelt. I heard the click. I heard the buckle. He set his backpack down between his feet and put his hands on his knees, and that all sounded normal. You know, the way denim scrapes on a seat, that little sound. I heard that he smelled faintly like sweat and that cold outside smell. No perfume, no cologne, just regular human smell. I put the truck into gear and eased back onto 153, and for the first few miles, I tried to treat it like any other ride. I asked him where he was headed. He said west, toward San Angelo, if that was where I was going. I said, yeah, that was my direction. I had to make a pickup first. He nodded and said, anything west is better than walking east, and he gave a little laugh that died quick. I asked if his vehicle broke down. He said something like, "You could say that. I did not push it. I am not a talker by nature. Most of that truck time is me and the radio and my thoughts." So the cab went quiet, just the hum of the engine and the rush of tires on asphalt. Every once in a while he cleared his throat. That was it. I tried not to look over because I did not want to be rude. I watched the white line on the right, the little reflectors blinking past. I checked my mirrors, and that is where the second wrong part slid in. Not fast, just a little drip of wrong. The mirrors did not seem to agree with themselves. In the big side mirror, I could see the side of the truck and the streak of road lit by my rear lights and the ditch and this long empty flatness beyond that. And in the small round mirror that points down so you can see your trailer, I saw a little slice of the side of the cab and the side of the trailer and just a hint of the window and where I would normally catch the edge of whoever is in that seat, their shoulder or the curve of their head. There was nothing. It was like the glass was empty. I told myself again that the angle was just weird, that the nighttime plays tricks. I lifted my hand off the wheel and scratched my neck, watched my own arm show up in that mirror as a darker shape. No problem seeing that, but every time I flicked my eyes back, the place where his shoulder should have been stayed, the same pale gray as if the seat was empty, I did not say anything. Dude, I should have said something. I should have pulled over and told him I changed my mind and let him out, but I did not. I tightened my grip and kept driving. My mouth went dry, and I took a sip of coffee, and it was cold. I had not realized how long I had been holding it. I checked the clock, expecting to see 8:20 or so, and the digits said 9:02, and my stomach did this little flip, because that made no sense. I had picked him up at 8:10 or so. I remember that sign. I remember the clock. That stretch between there and the turnoff should have been 20 minutes max, not 50. And yet we had not passed the little feed store I knew, sat halfway down this section, and we had not seen a single car going the other direction in almost an hour, according to that clock. But outside the window, it looked like any other dark Texas highway. The same barbed wire, the same ditch, the same old fence posts with white tops. I slowed a little, not enough to be obvious, and I said, trying to sound casual, "Hey man, what time you got?" My dash clock runs fast sometimes. And he said without any hesitation, 9:02. You are right on time. And my heart just went straight up into my throat because he should have had to pull his phone out of his pocket or his watch or something, but he answered like he had the time sitting right there in his head. I looked over then. I could not help it. And I saw the light from the dash on his face, green on his cheek and his eye, and nothing else, no reflection in the glass, no shadow on the seat behind him, just him sitting there like he was printed on top of the world instead of inside it, and I must have stared a second too long because he turned his head and looked right at me and smiled a little, not wide, just this tight little smile that did not belong to someone who had been walking that long, and he said, "Thanks for stopping." Most folks do not anymore. And I heard myself say, "Yeah, no problem," even though my skin was crawling, even though the hair on my arms was standing up under my jacket. I cleared my throat and made up a question because silence was worse. I said, "You from around here?" And he said, "Used to be." And then he let the words just hang there. Used to be, like they explained something. And I did not know what to do with that. I said, "Which town?" He tilted his head, like he was thinking, and then he said something that did not sit right in my ears. He said, "I get on at that sign back there, and I get off when the lights finally hit me. That is all there is now." And he looked at the road again, and I almost pulled the truck over right then and there. I almost did, I swear to God. But my hands were locked on the wheel, my foot just kept the same pressure on the gas, like my body had decided we were finishing this, and my brain could complain about it later. The road ahead looked longer than it should be. The beam of the headlights seemed to stretch too far, hitting things that should not be in range. A fence line way out there, a stand of oaks, a green reflective sign that did not get any closer for a long time. I started counting the reflectors as they went by, just to keep myself anchored. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I would start over, but the numbers kept slipping. I would get to 12 and then realize I had missed a whole bunch. I felt this pressure behind my eyes like a headache starting. The kind you get when you stare at a screen too long. I checked the gas gauge, and it was lower than it should have been. I know my truck. I know what a run like this uses. I had more than half a tank when I left Coleman, and now it was under a quarter. I had this stupid thought that maybe I had a leak, that maybe I was going to break down with this man in my cab on a road that would not get shorter. I must have made a sound without meaning to, some little noise, because he said, "You can let me out here if you want." And my whole spine went cold, because we were nowhere, just black on both sides. No driveway, no cross street, no house light, nothing. I said, "No, it is fine. The next town is not far," and I heard him exhale, one slow breath, and he said, "Not for you. I do not think." And then the radio popped on by itself. Some station I know for a fact I did not have saved. There was this old song playing, real old, like something out of the 50s, thin and crackly, and it was wrong for that station. I only get country and talk this far out, but this was a man singing about walking and waiting by a road over and over, the words repeating, and the volume knob was turning on its own, just a little, up and down, like someone was tapping it from the inside of the dash. And I said, "Okay, that is enough," and I reached out and snapped it off. The cab went dead quiet, and in that quiet I realized I could not hear him breathing beside me at all. It was just my own breath and the engine and the tires, and it hit me like a punch that I had not heard him shift in his seat. Not once, not a jacket rustle, not a shoe scuff. He had just sat in one position like a mannequin. And I finally did it. I finally said it, "Dude, are you messing with me?" And he answered right away, "No, sir, you picked me up, you brought me back on, that is all." And the way he said "back on" made my stomach twist, because it did not fit. I swallowed and said, "Back on what?" And he said the line, and then he laughed, soft, like a little inside joke. And that is when we passed the same county road sign again, the one I had seen 20 minutes earlier before I picked him up, the same bent post, the same bullet holes through the numbers, the same thin mesquite tree leaning over it. I remembered it because of the way the reflector was crooked, and there it was, on my right, and then in my mirror, shrinking, and my hands went slick on the wheel. That is when I knew, in my gut, that I was not just tired, that something had snapped loose, because highways do not bend back like that without you seeing it. You do not come back to the same sign from the same direction unless something has gone very wrong. I lifted my foot off the gas, the truck slowed, the engine noise dropped, the man beside me stayed exactly the same, looking straight ahead, hands on his knees, and I said, "No, no, no," not like swearing. Just saying the word like I was trying to push the world back into place. I hit the brakes, not hard, just enough to bring us down to 30, and I pulled onto the shoulder. The gravel crackled. The truck shuddered as we rolled over the rumble strip. I put it in park and the engine idled. and I just sat there for a second with both hands on the wheel, feeling my heart beat in my fingers. I could see my breath in the little beam of the dash, that white puff, and I turned my head slowly. Because I was scared of what I would see, scared of both options, him still there, or the seat empty. And what I saw was the worst combination of the two. The seat looked empty in every way that mattered. The belt was fastened, but there was no pull on it, no body. The cushion was not indented, there was no shape, but my eyes kept trying to draw one anyway. Like when you stare at a pattern and see faces, it was like my brain was doing that on the seat, making a man where there was none, but the light from the dash hit the space where he should be and went right through to the door. Nothing blocked it. It painted that green line across the handle and the armrest, and that was it. I could not breathe for a second. I reached out with my right hand and patted the seat. Nothing. Just cold fabric, but when my fingers brushed the middle, right where someone's leg would rest, I swear to God there was this sharp drop in temperature. Like sticking your hand into water that has been sitting in the shade all day. Not ice, just wrong, too cold for a cab that had been shut. My fingertips tingled. I snatched my hand back, heart hammering, and then his voice came from that cold patch of air, clear as if he was right there. He said I was hoping it would be different this time. That is all. And I jerked back against my own seat so hard my shoulder hit the window. I yelled something wordless, just a raw sound. And he spoke again, calm, almost gentle. You do not have to be scared. You climbed into that seat too once. Not this one, but one like it. You know how it feels. And I realized he was not talking to me exactly, or he was, but he was also talking past me, like there was someone else he was answering. I fumbled for the door handle on my side, thinking if I got out of the truck, this would all stop, like stepping out of a bad dream. I yanked it open. The cold air outside slapped me, smelled sharper than before, dirt and something metallic. I half fell to the ground. My boots slipped in the gravel. I stood up and went around the front of the truck, not even shutting my door all the way. And I looked at the passenger side. The dome light was on because the door had not been opened yet. There was no one sitting there. You understand? No one. The cab was empty, but the shadow on the inside roof was wrong. There was a dark shape there that did not match anything, like a person leaning forward, and the seatbelt on that side was twisted in a way it does not do on its own, like it had been pulled around a body that was not there anymore. And I heard footsteps behind me, crunching gravel, steady, like somebody walking up the shoulder, and every hair on my body stood up, because I knew without turning that the sound was not going to match what I saw. I turned anyway, slow, and the road was empty, both directions, just my truck lights fan across the pavement, hitting nothing but that white line in the ditch. The sky was a big black bowl with a smear of stars. No cars, no people, nothing. But the crunching did not stop. It went right past me, like someone brushed my left side. I felt a pressure in the air. Not a touch, not hands, just that sense when someone passes too close in a hallway. I stepped back, my boot hit the edge of the asphalt. I almost fell into the ditch, and then I watched the shoulder in front of the truck change. There were no footprints, nothing visible, but the gravel shifted, tiny stones rolling inward, making a faint depressed line like something was walking up toward the cab, and then the passenger door handle lifted on its own, smooth, no jerk. The door opened a crack, the dome light brightened, and right before the door swung all the way, the gravel indentation stopped, and there was nothing there, nothing to be casting that movement, nothing to be opening that door. And the shadow on the roof inside thickened, like someone had sat down. I could hear denim slide against vinyl without anyone in the seat. I could smell that faint sweat and dust again, like it had drifted out of nowhere. I know how this sounds. Man, I know if you play this for someone, they're gonna say, I was tired, or I fell asleep, or I am making it all up. But I'm telling you what I saw and heard and smelled. I am telling you straight. I stood there with my mouth open, breathing hard, my own breath puffing in the air, and I watched that seatbelt pull itself across the empty space and click into the buckle. And then his voice came from the cab, from the empty right side, and he said, "You should not stand in the road like that. It is not safe." And I looked down and realized I had stepped out into the lane without noticing. and that my truck lights were throwing my shadow long down the asphalt, and there were no other lights coming, no headlights, no taillights, just me and that box truck and that voice. I stumbled back onto the shoulder, my chest tight, and I did something I am not proud of. I begged. I said, "Please stop. I do not know what this is, but I have a family, I have a boy. I did not do anything." And the voice answered, not unkind, just flat. I had a boy too once, and a girl and a wife waiting on late freight that never came. And that is it. That is all he said about it. No details, no names, nothing. Just that. And that was somehow worse, because it felt like an answer without an answer, like being handed an empty box. I said, "What do you want from me?" My throat was so dry it hurt. And he said, "You stopped. That is enough." And the dome light went out. Click. The passenger door swung shut. The lock popped down on its own, and I was left standing there on the side of 153 with my own truck idling and my heart beating so loud it drowned out the engine. I could have walked away. I thought about it, leaving the truck and walking back toward Coleman, or forward toward I do not know what, just moving my feet until the sun came up. But I looked around, and you want to know what I saw? Nothing. That is the problem. Nothing at all. No house lights, no barn lights, no security light on a pole, no glow from a town, just black on black, and that ribbon of road. It felt like if I tried to walk, I would never hit a turnoff, like the road would just stretch and stretch. So I did the only thing my stupid brain could come up with. I climbed back into the cab. I am not lying to you. I got back in. I felt the cold hit me when I sat down. The steering wheel was icy. The seat under me felt normal on my side and wrong on the other, like the fabric there had been left outside all night. The clock on the dash flashed 12:00, like somebody had unhooked the battery and reattached it. My phone on the seat was dead, even though it had been on half battery an hour before. I turned the key off and back on. The truck shuddered. The engine caught. The radio came on with a blast of static. I slapped it off. I stared straight ahead, and I said out loud, "I am driving to San Angelo now. That is where I am going, and if you want to be here, that is on you. I am going home." My voice sounded like somebody else's, thin and high and shaking, and the voice beside me, without a body, said, "You will make it further than I did." And I do not know why, but that made my eyes fill up with tears. I did not understand it, but it hit me right in the chest. I put the truck in drive, and I pressed the gas, and the wheels spun a little in the gravel before they caught, and I pulled back out onto 153, and I drove like a man being chased, even though there was nothing in my mirrors. I kept my eyes on the center line. I did not look at the shoulder. I did not look into the passenger footwell where his backpack should have been, but was not. I did not touch the radio or the heater. I just drove, and after some amount of time, I do not know how long, my dead phone lit up by itself. The screen came on. It showed the time, 9:13. Like no time had passed at all. Like all of that had been folded into a minute or two. The battery jumped from 0 to 40% in one blink. No charging, nothing. And then the glow from a town slid up over the horizon, that soft orange haze you get from streetlights. And I cried. I am not ashamed to say it. I cried, big, stupid tears rolling down my face. Because that light meant other people, gas stations, sirens if I needed them, witnesses, life. I passed a sign for miles, 20 miles, then another for San Angelo, 40-something, and the whole time I drove, I felt that cold on my right, like a window cracked in winter, like being parked under an air vent, but there was no window open, and the vents were all pointed at me, not that side. When I finally hit the first edge of town, where the speed limit drops and you start seeing those metal buildings and billboards, my passenger side window fogged from the inside. Not a little, fully, like someone breathing on it, steady, and a shape started to trace in it. Not a picture, not words, just lines, back and forth, like a hand trying to draw something and forgetting halfway. I pulled into the yard at the warehouse on 2 wheels. I think I hit the curb. I do not remember putting the truck into park. I remember flinging the door open and stumbling out and falling to my knees on the gravel. My boss came out of the office because He heard the engine and he saw me like that and started shouting, "What is wrong? Did you hit somebody? Did you get robbed?" And I could not answer him. Not at first. I just pointed at the truck, at the passenger seat, and when he opened that door and looked inside, nothing was there. No fog on the glass, no twisted belt, no cold patch, just the same ugly seat with the burn mark from where someone dropped a cigarette years ago. I know what you are thinking. He thought I snapped. And maybe I did. I told him some of it, not all. I said I got turned around. I said I picked a guy up and he scared me and I dropped him off and kept going and I lost track of time. I did not say anything about no shadow or voices without bodies or clocks that did not make sense. He chewed me out for picking up a stranger, told me company policy says no riders, said I could have been robbed or worse, said if I ever did it again, I was done. And I nodded and said yes, sir, and acted ashamed, like that was the only mistake. They checked the truck for damage, looked at the fuel log. Everything lined up like I had just done a late run. The odometer matched the miles. The fuel usage was a little high, but not enough to set off alarms. They wrote it off. I clocked out at 10:02. My body felt like it had been awake for 3 days. My face hurt from how tight I had been clenching my jaw. I drove home in my own pickup, slower than I have ever driven. Every time I passed someone walking along a road, my hands tightened on the wheel and my chest closed up. I got home. My wife asked why I was late. I said there was an extra pickup, nothing big. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked wrong, not red from crying, just wide, like I had seen something and no one else had. I splashed water on my face. I went to bed. I lay there listening for something in the hallway, some footsteps. I did not hear any, but every time a car passed on the main road a mile away, I tensed. I slept maybe an hour. Here is the part that keeps eating at me. It did not stop that first night. I wish I could say it was one bad run and that was it, but it followed in smaller ways, not big like that, nothing that would prove anything, just enough to keep me on the edge. The next week they wanted to send me back up that way and I said no. I told them the truck was making a noise. I made things up. Then my boss said, fine, we will send Luis instead. And when he came back that night, I cornered him and asked how the run was. He said, fine. He said the only weird thing was some guy walking out there on the shoulder near 153, but he did not stop. He said, I am not dumb enough to pick anyone up out there at night. And he laughed and my stomach turned because of the way he said out there. Like he knew there was something wrong with that stretch, even if he would never admit it. I started hearing little pieces from other drivers too when they did that route. Nothing big, just, oh man, that road feels long. Or I swear I saw the same marker twice. Or there was this dude walking with no jacket. That is not right. And every time I heard something like that, I felt that cold from the passenger side again, like it was blowing through time straight into my ribs. At home, my wife started saying I was different, jumpy. She asked if something had happened on the job. I kept saying no. I did not want her looking at me the way my boss did, like I was one more problem to manage. But I stopped taking my boy on drives at night. He would ask to go look at Christmas lights in town and I would make excuses, say I was too tired, say we would go this weekend. And every time I passed that turnoff for 87 toward Eden, I felt like the pavement under my tires got thinner, like there was less of it between me and something else. I started parking my truck closer to the house instead of by the road. I leave the porch light on now, even though we are trying to save on the bill, the flicker my wife mentioned that morning. I fixed it the next day. I climbed up there in the daylight with a new bulb, and I changed it, and I tested it 3 times. On, off, just to be sure it worked. But sometimes I wake up around 3, the way I did tonight, and I swear I see that yellow dome light in my mind, that dull glow. And for a second, I cannot tell if I'm in my bed or in that truck on the side of 153, and I can feel the presence to my right again. Not loud, not throwing things, just there. Just expecting something. I tried to chalk it up to stress. I really did. I even went once to talk to a guy at church who does counseling. I told him I had a close call on the road, left the strange parts out, and he told me to rest, to be thankful I was alive, to lean on my faith, all the things you are supposed to say, but that did not change the fact that I still will not drive past Coleman after dark. I reroute in my head. I take longer ways. I look for more lights. I keep my eyes off the shoulders. I know this sounds small compared to the story you probably wanted. You wanted a monster with claws or some name you could look up. But that is not what this is. This is a man. Or what is left of one, walking a line of asphalt that will not end right. Getting in when somebody is kind or dumb enough to stop. Sitting where he should not be able to sit. Bending clocks just by being there. And then stepping out again before the mile marker ever changes. My granddad used to talk about a hitchhiker out on some other highway when I was a kid. You hear those stories all over. They always end with the person disappearing when you look away. And then you find out they died years ago and everyone laughs and shivers. And I used to like those stories. They felt safe, like campfire stuff, but this is not that. There was no old newspaper clipping, no name, no tombstone, just a man who knows what time it is without looking, who smells like sweat and dust and the inside of a truck cab, who talks like me enough that if you did not look too close, you would think he was just another guy who got stuck on the side of the road. I do not know how long he has been there or how many times he has gotten in. I only know that when he said, "You brought me back on," he meant it. He meant that there are breaks, maybe, gaps where he is not on that shoulder. And the only way he gets pulled out of whatever place he waits in is when somebody stops. And that thought has been sitting in me like a stone because I still cannot decide if I did something kind or something cruel that night. Did I help for a second? Did I make it worse? I will never know. And I have to live with that. And that is the part that keeps me up. I still see that sign in my sleep, the bent one, with the bullet holes, and there's always a shape by it. Not a clear face, just the suggestion of a man. And he turns when my lights hit him and lifts his arm a little. And every time in the dream I keep going, I keep my foot on the gas. But in real life I did not. I stopped, I let him in, I wrapped that seatbelt around air and clicked it shut. And now I cannot shake the feeling that some part of me is still doing laps out there on 153 with him. Going past the same county road over and over, watching the same sign, waiting for lights that finally hit and then never change anything. That is why I am out here at 3 in the morning behind my trailer talking into my phone instead of sleeping next to my wife. That is why my boots are still on, because I do not want to go inside just yet. I step to the edge of the gravel sometimes and look down the little county road that runs past our place, and if a car goes by slow, if their brake lights flash, even once, my heart kicks. I wait to see if they stop and let someone in, and I should not care. I should just mind my business, but I cannot help it. I listen for the sound of another engine in the distance, one of our company trucks maybe, and I picture that cold side of the cab lighting up. I will not work nights anymore. I told them I would take cuts, I would do yard work, anything but that route. They think it is about being tired or wanting to see my kid more, and that is part of it, sure. But the truth is, I know that if I ever went back up 153 after dark and I saw him again and he lifted that tired arm, I would stop anyway. Even knowing what I know, because leaving him there might be worse, and that is a kind of hook in my brain. I do not know how to pull out. I do not have an ending for you. There is no big crash, no police report, no news story. I am still here. I am still driving, mostly in daylight. I still go to work. I still eat burnt toast and drink bad coffee. I still wipe mustard stains off my shirt. I still kiss my boy on the head and fix porch lights. But there is a stretch of highway on the map I will not trace with my finger anymore. And if someone starts to tell a hitchhiker story at a barbecue, I walk away because I have already heard the one that matters to me. I heard it from a man who is not really here and not really gone, sitting in a cab that feels smaller when he is in it, talking about the line like it is the only thing left. And I cannot carry more than that. I am already full. So if you are hearing this and you ever find yourself out past Coleman on 153 at night and you see a guy in a thin brown jacket walking with his back to you and he lifts his arm just a little, when your lights hit him, you do what you want. I am not going to tell you to stop or to keep going. I am just telling you that if you do stop, if you let him climb up into the light of your cab, do not look too hard for his shadow. Do not ask him the time. And if he tells you that you brought him back on, believe him, because once you let him in, some part of you is going to be riding that stretch with him for the rest of your life, just like I am right now while I sit here behind my trailer staring at the dark and jumping at every set of headlights that passes 3 roads over. I do not work night shifts anymore, but night still works on me, every mile of it. My name's Lane Cotter. I'm from Winters, out past Ballinger, and I work as a roadside service tech. The guy they send when your truck dies on some stretch of Texas highway nobody else wants to drive at night. I need you to listen because this started so normal that I keep trying to tell myself it was just a bad run of shifts, just overtime and bad coffee getting into my head. But then I look at my hands and I still feel that doorknob under my fingers, and I know I am not making this up. Man, that first day was a Tuesday. I remember because I had the same breakfast I always do on a Tuesday when the schedule says nights. I got up around 2 in the afternoon because I had the late shift, and I made eggs and a couple of tortillas in the pan and ate standing up at the counter like I always do, phone propped against the empty bread bag, playing some stupid video to wake my brain up. I was wearing that gray company shirt with my name patch crooked because the stitching is off, and it still has that long brown stain down the front from when a coolant hose blew up in my face in July. I keep telling myself I should ask for a new one, but then I think there is something about keeping the same shirt, like it is already ruined, might as well keep ruining it. I remember checking the time on the stove. It said 2:47, and I like that because I'm supposed to clock in at 4, so I had enough time to grab coffee on the way to the yard. I brushed my teeth, grabbed my work boots from by the door. They were still dusty from the last call I did out on that farm road, and I locked up my little rental duplex with the peeling white paint and the cheap brass knob that always squeaks. The sun was still high, that flat white kind of light you get out here when the sky is empty, and the wind was barely moving. No storm, no fog, nothing weird, just another shift. I clocked in at 3:58 like I always try to do, because if I punch it in right before 4, my supervisor leaves me alone. I remember the way the punch clock clicked. I remember it showing my last name spelled wrong because someone messed it up in the system and they still have not fixed it. They had my truck parked in the second bay. It is this old white service truck with the big box on the back, full of jacks and impact guns and compressors and random junk, and the seat has a rip on the left side where the foam sticks through and rubs the back of your thigh. I tossed my small cooler on the passenger side floorboard. It had a ham sandwich in a little plastic bag, a bag of chips, and 2 cold cans of that cheap soda I buy when it is on sale. I remember each thing. I can list them out because I stared at them later trying to figure out if anything was different. I checked the fuel gauge, 3/4. I checked the mileage and wrote it down on the trip sheet like I am supposed to. The sky was starting to tilt toward that late afternoon color, but there was still nothing strange. They had me scheduled for general coverage that night, which means you just sit out on one of the main stretches and wait for dispatch to ping your little tablet when some trucker calls in. It is boring if nothing breaks, but it is easy money, man. You just drive and listen to the radio and drink your coffee. That night, they told me to park out along 84 between Sweetwater and Post. I have done that 100 times. It is just miles of 2-lane, some ranch driveways, the occasional gas station, and long gaps where there's nothing but scrub and fences and those skinny power line poles marching out into the dark. I know that road. I know where the pavement dips, where the shoulder crumbles, where the deer like to cross. That matters because when something changes out there, you feel it hard. I stopped at this gas station in Sweetwater. I used too much, got a styrofoam cup of coffee that was too strong and tasted like it had been sitting for hours, and a chocolate bar I did not even want but grabbed anyway. The clerk rang me up, I signed, I said something dumb about the weather, and then I got back in the truck and drove out into the evening. The sun went down slow, that wide orange strip across the horizon, and then it was just the headlights and the little pool of light on the gauges inside. Around 8 or 9, it was full dark, that country kind of dark where your high beams eat all the color and the world is just black and gray and yellow lines. I pulled off on a wide shoulder, about halfway between 2 exits, I know, killed the engine, left the running lights on, checked the tablet, nothing pending. So I leaned the seat back a little, unwrapped my sandwich, and ate while I scrolled my phone. It was quiet, not creepy, not special, just quiet. You can hear the wind push against the truck sometimes, and every now and then, a semi roars past and rocks you a little. I think it was around 10 when I saw the trailer the first time. I need you to understand that the first time, it did not feel like a horror movie. It just felt like something odd that I was too tired to care about. I had just put the wrapper from my sandwich into the little trash bag I hang off the shifter, and I was about to start the engine to move up a bit because I like to drive every hour just to stay awake, when I saw these taillights down the highway. Just two red dots way out there, not moving, like a vehicle pulled off on the right shoulder. That is normal. People overheat, blow tires, run out of gas. I waited to see if they pulled back onto the road. They did not. So I started the truck, flipped on the strobes, and merged back onto 84, headed toward them. The closer I got, the stranger it looked, but not for reasons I can explain right. At first, I thought it was a box truck. Then I thought it was one of those old campers, the kind you tow behind a pickup. The taillights were wrong for something that old though, and they were too low. There were no hazard flashers, just two solid red circles at the bottom corners. I remember checking my tablet to see if dispatch had dropped a new call. Nothing. I rolled up anyway because if there is someone out there who needs help, I am supposed to check. I pulled up behind it, about 50 feet back, left my strobes and headlights on, set the parking brake, and climbed out. The air felt colder than it should for that time of year, but sometimes the wind shifts out there and brings in a cold pocket. It was a trailer, like a rectangular box on two axles, no truck attached. The body of it was a dull white, maybe gray, kind of scuffed up but not rusty. On the back wall, where you would expect the double doors or the ramp, there was just one regular-sized door, and that door was painted this solid red. Not bright like a new fire engine, and not dark like old barn paint, just solid, flat red. No window, no stickers, no words, no company name, just the door and a handle and a keyhole that did not have a key in it. There was a small plate mount under one of the taillights, but no plate. The trailer was sitting level, which is what bothered me even then, because there was no truck under the front. There should have been a tongue or a fifth wheel or something, some jack stand. I walked around to the side to see how they had it propped up, and I did not see anything. It just sat there, like the front part was resting on air. I told myself I was just not seeing it right in the beam of my lights. I walked back to the rear. The red door did not have any scratch marks or dents. There were no company logos, nothing stenciled. I called out, loud enough to be heard over the wind and the hum of my strobes. I said, "Hey, roadside service, you folks all right in there?" No answer. I knocked once on the door with my knuckles. It felt solid, like the metal skin of a trailer just painted over. I put my ear near it for a second, trying to listen. Nothing. No radio, no footsteps, no voices. Usually, if someone is in trouble out there, you hear them moving, you hear them call back. It was dead quiet. I tried the handle. It did not move at all. Not like it was locked, more like it was a part of the door that had never been used. I told myself whoever owned it must be inside one of the ranch houses. Maybe they left it there. Maybe it was a storage thing, and I did not have any right to mess with it. I walked around the whole perimeter once, shining my flashlight on the tires. The dirt under them was dry and light, but I do not remember seeing any tracks leading up from the road. I know that sounds like I am adding drama, but that is what bothered me on the way back to my truck. The shoulder was flat and dusty. If something that heavy had been backed up there, you would see ruts. I did not see any. I told myself I just was not paying attention. I got back in my truck, wrote a note on my sheet about a stationary trailer, no contact, no hazard, and I called it in to dispatch just in case. I said there is an unmarked trailer on the shoulder, around mile marker, whatever, no truck, no people. The guy on the radio just said copy, and that was that. I pulled back onto the road, passed it on my left, and as my headlights slid across that red door, I got this little twist in my stomach, just a tiny one, like when you think you saw someone in your back seat in the rear view, and then you realize you are alone. I shook it off. I drove farther down the highway, found another wide shoulder, and parked again. I did not think about it much after that. The next time I saw it, I was almost an hour and a half away. That is when something in my brain shifted from weird to wrong. It was the same night. I know that because I checked my trip sheet later, and the dates match, and because my cooler still had the second can of soda in it. After leaving that first spot, I had one call out near a little town off a farm to market road, a guy with a blown tire, and by the time I finished that and got back on the main stretch, it was pushing midnight. The sky felt lower, the kind of black that presses down. There was no moon or if there was, I could not see it. The traffic had thinned. I had the radio off by then because sometimes the songs start blurring together and make your head feel weird. I was just driving, watching the lines, taking sips from that same cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm. I started seeing taillights again, far ahead. 2 points of red that did not move much. I told myself it was a slow-moving truck or someone pulling a camper. I kept my speed steady and let the distance close. A couple of minutes later, I realized they were not on the road. They were off to the right, on the shoulder again. That happens. People pull off for all kinds of reasons. When I got closer, my stomach did that twist again. It looked like the exact same silhouette. Boxy shape, low taillights, no truck in front. I told myself, there are plenty of trailers, plenty of red doors. Do not be dramatic. But my hands were already a little tight on the wheel. I pulled up behind it again. The mile marker was different now, way farther down. There is no way it could have been the same trailer without someone hooking it up and driving it. And if they had done that, someone would have seen and there would be marks in the dirt. None of that hit me right away though. I just felt this resistance inside, like every part of me wanted to keep driving past it. I almost did. I almost said, not my problem, and went on. But then the training kicks in and you think, what if someone is stuck and you just left them there? So I slowed, swung in behind it, strobes on again, same routine. The clock on my dash said 12:06. I sat there for a second with my hands on the wheel, just staring at that rectangle in my headlights. The red looked a little darker now in the night, but it was the same solid paint, no marks. I thought, you are being ridiculous. Lane, just go check. So I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out into the wind. It felt colder now, more than it should have been for a clear night in that part of the year. I heard a coyote way off somewhere, then it stopped. Up close, it was the same trailer. I am telling you. Same scuffs, same spot of discoloration at the bottom corner, same missing plate. I walked around it, light on the tires. The dirt under them was hard and smooth, like they had been sitting there a long time. But when I crouched down to look for tracks, I did not see any lines or crushed grass behind them. Just the trailer, sitting like it had grown from the ground. That made my skin crawl a little. I walked back to the red door and called out again. Hey, roadside service, you all right in there? I waited. This time I heard something. Not a voice, not yet. It was a faint sound, like someone shifting their weight on wooden boards far away. I thought maybe the wind was pushing the skin of the trailer and it was just settling. I pressed my ear to the metal for a second. That is when I heard the knocking from inside. It was small, not loud, not desperate, just 3 knocks spaced out, knuckle on wood, from the inside of that red door. It was low, like knee height. My brain filed that away later. At the moment, it just felt wrong. I jerked back. I almost called out again, something big and official like I was trained to do, but what came out of my mouth was just, hey. Then, clear as day, this little voice, a kid's voice, said, help me. I stepped back so fast, I tripped over my own boots and had to catch myself on the side of the trailer. The voice was not echoing or distorted. It did not sound like it was coming through a speaker. It sounded like when you're standing outside a house and a kid is just on the other side of the door. It had that muffled, close quality. High, but not baby high, maybe 7 or 8 years old if I had to guess. It said, help me, and then it went quiet. I swallowed and said, hey, you heard in there. Are you alone? Can you open the door? No answer. I listened hard. Nothing. I tried the handle again. This time it gave just a fraction, like it wanted to turn, but something inside was holding it. There was no key on the outside, no lock I could pick. My training says you call law enforcement if you suspect someone trapped or hurt. So my hands went for my phone. The screen was dead. Not off, not black, just frozen on the time, 12:06. I'd been out there long enough to walk around and knock and trip, but the time was the same. I glanced at my truck. The dash clock looked like it was still on 12:06 as well. I got this tight feeling behind my eyes at that. It is a little thing, but when the clock stopped matching what you feel in your body, something breaks in your head. I hit the side button on my phone. Nothing. The flashlight was still working though. I put the phone back in my pocket and told myself it was just a glitch. I knocked again, a little higher this time. I said, kid, I am going to get you out. Just hang on. The voice did not come back. Instead, the knocking started again, but now it was farther away. It still sounded like knuckles on wood, but it was like it was down a hallway. 3 knocks, same rhythm. Then another 3, farther, like something was walking away from the door while knocking on the walls as it went. I stepped back until my boots were off the gravel and on the asphalt, because something in me did not want my back to that red rectangle. I called dispatch on the radio in the truck, standing in the open door like a coward so I could jump in if I needed to. The radio crackled, answered fine. No static, no weirdness. I said, "There is a trailer, about mile marker, whatever, red door. I think a kid is inside. Can you get the county out here?" The dispatcher sounded bored, like always. He said, "You got a contact there." I said, "I heard a voice, a kid asking for help." He said, "You sure you are not hearing the radio in your truck?" And I almost got mad right then because it felt like I was being made fun of. I said, "No, I am standing right here. Can you just send someone?" He sighed and said he would notify the sheriff. I thanked him and hung the mic back up. I turned around to look at the trailer again. It was exactly where I left it. The lights on the back were still glowing red, but now that I thought about it, I did not see where they were wired. There were no visible cables running to a battery. They just glowed, steady, not pulsing like regular brake lights. The red door did not move, no sound, no more knocking. I told myself to stay back until Law got there. But then my brain did that thing where it runs ahead of you. Was there really a kid? Could it be a prank? Could it be something worse? You stand there in that cold wind, and your thoughts go places you do not want them to. I ended up sitting in my truck with the engine idling, staring at my side mirror so I could see the trailer behind me without turning around. The clock on the dash finally ticked over from 12:06 to 12:07. My phone came back to life like nothing had happened. I checked it. The time matched. No missed calls, no new messages. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. Nobody came. No headlights in either direction. That is what got me. That stretch of 84 is never that dead for that long. Usually you get at least a couple of semis rolling through. I stepped out once, stood in the middle of the lane, looked both ways. Empty. Horizon in both directions. Nothing but a faint glow where some distant town might be. I felt like I had fallen out of the route somehow, like the rest of the world just slid a few inches to the side. After about half an hour, my radio crackled. The dispatcher said sheriff's deputy is coming from town, but he is tied up on something. Just hang there till he shows. I said, "How long?" He said, "Maybe 20, 30. His voice sounded fuzzy, like he was farther away than he should have been. I looked at the fuel gauge. Still fine. I told myself I could wait. So I sat there, watching that red door in the mirror, watching the clock, listening to my own breath. I do not know how long it was before I realized the taillights were gone. 1 second they were little red dots in the mirror, and the next, the mirror was just dark. My heart jumped into my throat so hard I had to grab the wheel. I twisted around in the seat. The trailer was still there, big and solid, but the 2 red circles on the back had gone out. The highway seemed darker without them. I cracked my door open just a little to listen. That is when I heard the knocking again, but it was not coming from the trailer anymore. It was coming from under my truck. 3 soft knocks, metal from inside the frame or the toolbox bolted to the bed. I can still feel it in my teeth. Then that small voice, clearer than before, from somewhere directly under my seat, said, "Help me, please." I slammed the door and hit the locks, like that little click of plastic would do anything. My hands were shaking. I told myself there had to be some kid crawling under there as a joke, or someone trying to rob me, but that did not make sense. I am not carrying anything worth that kind of trouble. And besides, my truck sits high. I would have seen feet. I stared at the windshield, breathing too fast, waiting for something to move out there. The knocking came again, a little harder this time, from the same spot. 3 knocks, same spacing. Then it shifted, like whatever it was had crawled the length of the frame, and the sound came from right under my heels on the floorboard. My boots vibrated. The voice was closer now, like it was directly under my seat. Help me. I do not know what possessed me, but I started talking to it. I said, "Where are you? Can you tell me your name? Did you get hurt?" Nothing. Just breathing. A little wet sound of air. I reached for my radio again, but before I could lift it, all the power in the truck died. The dash went black. The engine choked itself out. My running lights, my strobes, everything cut. I was sitting out there in complete dark with that sound under my feet. The only light was from my flashlight on the passenger seat. So I grabbed it and held it up, like that would do anything. The knocking stopped, the voice stopped. For a second I thought maybe whatever it was had left. That is stupid, I know, because where would it go, but I wanted to believe it. I cracked the driver door again and leaned out to shine the beam under the truck. Nothing, just gravel, the shadow of the frame, my own boot print from earlier when I stepped out. No kid, no animal, no wires dangling, just empty space. I sat back, shut the door, locked it again because my brain is small and likes rituals, and I whispered, "Knock again if you can hear me." I do not know why I did that. Maybe some part of me needed proof that I was not losing it. For a few seconds, there was nothing, just the sound of the wind and my breathing. Then, from behind me now, from the direction of the trailer, came a knock that rattled the glass in my rear window. Not three, not gentle, one hard slam like a giant fist. Then the little voice, but it did not sound like it was behind me. It sounded like it was right beside my ear, inside the cab, whispering through the air vent. "Help me," it said, but the last word stretched too long, like the sound was trying to crawl into my head. Something in me broke. I threw my whole weight on the key, trying to turn it. Nothing happened. I tried again, and on the third try, the truck roared back to life like nothing had happened. All the lights came on at once, radio blared, strobes started flashing. I did not look back. I do not know how fast you can go from park to highway speed in a fully loaded service truck, but I found out. I dropped it in drive and stomped the pedal, wheels spitting gravel, and I pulled out without even checking for traffic. There was none. There was nothing but empty blacktop ahead. In my mirror, for a few seconds, I saw the trailer falling away. No lights on it now, just a gray shape with that red door faint in my taillights. Then the highway curved, and it was gone. The clock on my dash said 12:07. It was still 12:07. I had the pedal down for at least a mile. It should not have still been 12:07. I did not stop until I hit the next exit with a gas station. I pulled in too fast, parked crooked across two spots, and sat there with my hands shaking on the wheel. The parking lot lights felt like a blessing, humans, concrete, all that. I checked my phone again. Now the time said 1:24. I had lost over an hour, and I do not remember driving that stretch. My trip sheet mileage did not add up right either. There were 20 miles that had no notes, no times, just blank air. I called dispatch and asked where the deputy was. The guy sounded annoyed. He said, "What deputy?" I said, "The one you said you were sending about the trailer with the red door." He was quiet for a second, then he said, "You did not call about any trailer tonight. You just checked in your one-tire job," and then radio went quiet. I told him that was not possible, that I had called, that I had been sitting out there waiting. He said, "You okay, Lane? You need relief?" I almost said yes, but then I thought about going back to the yard and having to explain why I cut my shift. So I said I was fine, I just must be mixing something up. He told me to take a break and then resume coverage on a different stretch. I agreed, hung up, and sat there for a long time, staring at the red stop button on the fuel pump like it was something dangerous. That was the first night. I went home when my shift ended at 6, told myself it was stress and too much caffeine and the way the dark plays tricks on you. I tried to wash the feeling off in the shower. I went to bed with the blinds cracked just enough that the streetlight outside threw a stripe across the ceiling, and I told myself, trucks make noises, trailers exist, kids cry for help in my head sometimes because I see too much of the bad side of the road. But the next time I saw that trailer, it was in daylight. 3 days later, on a Friday, they had me on a daytime rotation off 20, closer to Abilene. I woke up at 5 that morning, had toast and peanut butter because I was running late, threw on the same gray shirt because my other one was still in the wash and still not dry. My hands smelled like dish soap and coffee when I grabbed the steering wheel. I remember checking the mirror to see if my eyes were red. They were, but that is normal. I clocked in at 6 on the dot, grabbed the keys for a different truck because mine was in for maintenance, and rolled out. The sun came up over the flatland like a slow lid lifting. The day was bright, almost too bright after so many nights. You can see all the way to the horizon in every direction out there. it felt safe. I had 3 calls in the morning, all boring. 1 jump start, 1 fuel run, 1 lockout. I ate my lunch in the truck, a cold burrito from a gas station, microwave wrapper on my lap, radio murmuring, some talk show. Around 2 in the afternoon, I got a ping on the tablet for a truck that had thrown a belt just east of a little town that is basically a sign and a grain elevator. I punched in the coordinates, turned off onto a farm road, and let the GPS guide me. The sky was so blue it almost hurt. The fields were dry, that stiff brown grass waving in the little wind, and there were no clouds. I followed the little line on the screen until it told me to slow down. I saw the box shape on the shoulder before I saw the disabled truck. If I had not seen it before, if this had been the first time, I would have just thought, someone left a trailer out here. But my whole body recognized it before my brain did. Dull white sides, low profile, no logos. And that red door on the back, facing the highway, there was a pickup about 20 yards ahead of it, with its hood up, a guy standing beside it waving his hat when he saw me. I should have kept my eyes on him. Instead, my gaze kept sliding back to that red rectangle over his shoulder. I pulled in behind the pickup, putting it between me and the trailer, killed the engine, and stepped out with my tool bag. The guy started talking right away about how he was late for somewhere and how the belt looked shredded. I nodded, popped my hood, started digging for the right part. I tried to focus on the work, but the whole time, out of the corner of my eye, I could see the edge of that trailer. It looked wrong in daylight. The paint on the sides was too clean in some places and too dull in others, like parts of it were newer than others. The red on the door did not reflect the sun like normal paint. It just sat there, flat, drinking the light. At some point, the guy must have noticed I kept glancing past him. He turned, looked, and shrugged. He said, "That thing creeps me out, man." I asked, "How long has it been there?" He said, "I do not know. It was here when I broke down, and I've been waiting an hour. You ever seen it before?" I lied and said no. He said, "There is no hitch on the front. Did you see that?" I said, "You looked at it." He said, "I just walked around it one time, but I did not feel right about getting close to that door." He laughed when he said that, but it was the kind of laugh that hangs in the air too long. I finished his belt, signed his paperwork, watched him drive away. The whole time the trailer sat there on its invisible front support, red door dead center. When his dust settled, it was just me and that thing and the ticking sound of my cooling engine. The GPS on my dash flickered once, just a little glitch, map spinning half a degree. I swallowed. Then I heard the knocking again. It came from behind the trailer this time, where there should have been nothing but open field and fence. 3 knocks, wood on wood, steady. My body moved before my brain decided anything. I stepped around the pickup, walked closer. Midday sun, cicadas buzzing somewhere, heat coming off the asphalt. You would think that would make it less scary. It did not. I could see dust on the lower edge of the trailer, but the sides were spotless, like nothing ever leaned against them. There were no footprints between it and the fence. I got close enough that I could see the brushstrokes in the red paint. They were vertical, even, like someone had taken their time. There was no flaking, no fading at the edges. I lifted my hand to knock back and stopped just short. It hit me that if I made that same pattern, 3 knocks, I would be agreeing to something I did not understand. I changed it. I gave it 2 quick taps instead. I said, "I heard you." There was a pause, long enough for me to feel stupid. The highway behind me stayed quiet. No cars passed. Then, from inside, right behind the door, I heard small feet running. That is the best I can say. The sound of bare feet on a wooden hallway, fast, light. They came toward the door, stopped so suddenly the last step squeaked. Then the voice, just on the other side of the metal, said, "You found me." Everything inside me locked up. There was no way that voice could be in that box without me having heard them before. I looked for vents, windows, anything. There was nothing. I said, "Are you alone in there?" The voice did not answer the question. It just said, "Open," like a command. Not please, not help, just open. The way it said, it made me feel like my hand moving toward the handle was not my idea. I grabbed the handle before I could talk myself out of it. The metal felt colder than it should have, and a little damp, like it had been in a fridge. I twisted. This time, it turned all the way. There was a click, not loud, more like a latch in an old house. The door moved inward an inch. Light spilled out, but not daylight. It was a flat, ugly white, like the kind of fluorescent tubes you get in old offices. I could not see much past the gap, just a slice of something that looked like gray flooring. The air that came out smelled wrong. Not rotten or bloody or anything like that, just wrong, like air from a place that does not cycle through the same sky as yours. A little too dry, a little too cold. Like the inside of a big freezer that has not been opened in a long time. My hand wanted to pull the door open farther. Every instinct screamed at me not to. I have done a lot of dumb things on the road, but stepping through somebody's random door is not on that list. I said, I am going to call somebody to help you, okay? The voice did not sound like a kid anymore. Not exactly. It still had the high pitch, but there was something off in the rhythm. It said, you came back this time. That is all it said. You came back this time. That is the moment that keeps looping in my head because I had never opened the door before. Not all the way, not like that. But the way it said this time made my brain feel like mush, like maybe there were other times I do not remember. Like maybe that missing hour on the highway a few nights before was not just me driving in a daze. The light from inside flickered once, and the gap in the door seemed to stretch. That sounds crazy, but that is how it felt. 1 second the opening was a few inches. Next second it felt like it went back much farther than it should. I could see a strip of gray floor that did not match the outside dimensions of the trailer. There was no wall opposite, just more floor and light fading off. And at the edge of that light, far back, I thought I saw something like the shape of a shoulder turning away. Not a kid-sized shoulder, bigger. That snapped me out of it. I pushed the door shut hard, using my whole body. It slammed, metal ringing. The handle bit my palm. I heard the feet run again, closer and closer, like whoever it was had turned and sprinted for the door. The last few steps hit right as the latch clicked. For a split second, I felt pressure on the other side, like small hands hitting the metal. The voice screamed then, but it was not angry. It sounded disappointed. It said, "You almost did it." Then silence. My heart was pounding so hard, my vision blurred. I stepped back, tripped on a rock, almost fell. I turned and ran for my truck, not even caring how it looked. I threw my bag in the passenger seat, slammed the door, turned the key. It started on the first try. I peeled out and blew dirt all over that empty road. In my mirror, the trailer stood there, door shut, no light leaking. It did not fade away or vanish dramatically. It just got smaller until the curve of the road hid it. I told no one. I thought about calling my boss, calling the sheriff, calling anyone, but the words died in my throat every time. How do you say that in a way that does not get you pulled in for a drug test or a psych eval? A trailer with a red door followed me across counties and talked like a child, but knew things about other times. I went home that night and sat on the step outside my little place for an hour before I could bring myself to touch my own doorknob. It is brass, dull, scratched, and it looked wrong in my hand, like my brain had swapped it with that cold handle from earlier. Things did not get better after that. It started showing up in smaller ways. The first time was at the yard. A week later, same schedule, different truck. I was finishing a shift, dropping my keys in the lockbox, and I went to the restroom before heading home. It is this little single stall thing in the back of the shop, concrete floor, metal door painted white. I was washing my hands, staring at the cracked mirror when someone knocked. 3 knocks, same rhythm. I said, "Be right out." Then I realized the knocks had come from behind me, where the cinder block wall is, not from the hallway. I turned slowly. The paint around the door frame looked normal. The door itself, though, had a faint red tinge near the edges, like someone had started painting it and stopped. I blinked. It was white again. I dried my hands, opened the door, and looked out. The hallway was empty. The bay doors were open to the evening air. My coworker was sweeping by the lifts, humming something under his breath. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Then there was the night I was off duty, riding with a friend into town in his old pickup. We were heading along a farm road, talking about nothing, windows down. I had started to feel almost normal again, like maybe the trailer was tied to my job, to that specific stretch of highway, and if I stayed off it, I would be fine. My friend slowed down to take a curve, and his headlights swung across an old field entrance on the right. For a split second, I saw it there, backed up against the fence. Dull white sides, red door, no truck hitch. Then the lights moved on, and when I craned my neck around to look, there was nothing but a rusted out cattle trailer and a barbed wire fence. My friend asked what I was doing. I said my stomach hurt. I started sleeping with a chair propped under my own front doorknob. It is a cheap hollow core thing with chipped off-white paint, not red at all, but at night, when the house gets quiet and you can hear every little click in the walls, I kept imagining the paint peeling back to show a red layer underneath. I would lay there in the dark, watching the faint line of light under the door, and swear it grew brighter sometimes, like there was a hallway on the other side instead of my tiny living room. The worst was the last time I saw it, and that is why I will not work nights anymore. It was about a month after the first encounter. The weather had turned colder for real by then, sky going gray around 5, wind picking up little bits of dust off the shoulders. They put me back on night coverage because we were short-staffed. I argued a little, but I needed the hours. I told myself it was just roads, asphalt and dirt and people with broken machines. I made myself eat a decent dinner, some leftover casserole my neighbor's aunt had given me, warmed up in the oven until the cheese on top bubbled. I wore a different shirt that night, one of the new ones they had finally ordered, stiff with starch, my name patched sewn straight this time. Small changes, things you cling to. I clocked in as the sun went down and got assigned a route that made my stomach drop. 84 again, farther west this time, closer to Snyder. I did not argue. You do not keep a job like mine by refusing the ugly stretches. I took my truck, checked the tires, touched the fender like it was a dog's shoulder, and drove out. The first hour was fine. The second was quiet enough that the quiet started to feel thick. I drank both cans of soda from my cooler too fast, and the sugar made my heart race. Around midnight, dispatch sent me to a call way out near an old rest stop that hardly anyone uses anymore. Guy with a van said his engine was making a bad noise, and he was scared to drive it farther. I headed that way, squinting at the reflective signs, counting the mile markers, every one of them a little nail holding me in the normal map of the world. The rest stop was what you would expect. 2 picnic tables with peeling paint, a couple of trash cans, one of those concrete bathroom structures with separate doors for men and women, and a few old lights on tall poles buzzing moths. The van was parked near the bathroom. I pulled in behind it, already framing my greeting in my head. Then I noticed there was no one inside. No silhouette in the driver's seat, no movement behind the glass. The hood was up, but there were no legs sticking out from underneath. I stepped out, called hello. No answer. I walked up to the van, peered in. Empty. The interior looked lived in. Fast food cups, blanket on the back seat, a little stuffed animal on the dash. There was a half-drunk bottle of water in the cup holder. The engine compartment was cold. No sign anyone had been poking around recently. The air felt dead in that place, like the wind had forgotten it. I checked my tablet to confirm the call. It showed the location, the time requested. It did not show a contact number. That is unusual, but not unheard of. Sometimes people give up and leave before we arrive. I told myself that is what happened. I walked around the bathroom building to see if someone was out back. Nobody. The grass was patchy, dirt underneath packed hard. That is when I saw the trailer. It was not on the shoulder this time. It was backed up to the far edge of the rest stop near the tree line, like someone had parked it there on purpose. It was partly in shadow, but the red door stood out strong, even in the weak light from the parking lot poles. It looked smaller and bigger at the same time, like it did not fit the space it was in. My legs felt like they did not want to move forward anymore. The air between me and it felt thick. The buzzing from the lights overhead got louder in my ears, like the sound was being pushed down into my skull. I took one step toward it anyway. Then another. Each footfall sounded too loud. I could hear my own breathing, ragged. I remember thinking, do not go near it, do not go near it, and at the same time thinking, if you leave now, you will never sleep again, because you will not know what it wanted. When I was about 10 yards away, I smelled that same wrong cold. It cut through the smell of dust and old trash and engine oil. There were no taillights on this time, no glow. The trailer just sat there, pale skin blending into the dark. The red door had a faint line of light around it, as if there was a gap all the way around the frame, but that could have been my eyes playing tricks. I stopped just out of arm's reach. My hand was shaking so bad I tucked it into my pocket. I said, "I know you." I should not have said that, but it came out. There was a pause. Then the knocking started. Not from inside, but from the bathroom building behind me. 3 knocks from the men's door, 3 from the women's, then 3 from the cinder block wall between them. The sound moved in a circle, door to door to wall, like something was pacing around the whole structure, testing each surface. I spun around, flashlight beam jerking across dirty paint and chipped concrete. No one there. The wind picked up, made the trees at the edge of the lot rustle, but the sound of the knocking cut through that, sharper. My heart was beating so hard, it made my vision pulse. Then, all at once, the knocking stopped. The rest stop went quiet again, too quiet. I turned back toward the trailer. The red door was open. Not all the way, just a crack, maybe 6 inches. Enough to show a vertical strip of that ugly white light inside. The air coming out of it hit my face like the moment you open the door to a walk-in freezer. My breath fogged in front of me, even though the night outside was mild. I could see the edge of the floor in there, that gray tile or whatever it is, and the corner of a wall that did not match the outside dimensions. The hallway stretched away in a way that made my head hurt to look at. It did not seem to get dimmer with distance the way normal light does. It just went and went and went, until the lines of the floor and ceiling were too thin to see, but the light was still the same. There was someone standing way down that hallway, a silhouette, small, maybe the size of a kid, facing away from the door. The distance was wrong. They were too far for me to see them, but I could. I could see the shape of their head, the way their arms hung too straight at their sides. They were facing the far end of the hall, like they were waiting for something down there. I wanted to run. My knees locked. The air in my lungs felt heavy. My hand, without me telling it to, lifted toward the door. I think I said something like, "You called me." The silhouette shifted, just a little tilt of the head, like they had heard. Then the footsteps started. They were fast. Not a walk, not quite a run, more like the sound you hear when a kid is playing and hopping from tile to tile. Bare feet slapping on that gray surface, a beat too quick to be comfortable. The silhouette did not grow larger like it should with distance. It stayed the same size, but the footsteps got louder, closer, until the sound filled the space between my ears. My hand froze inches from the door. The little voice came then, not from the hallway, not from the trailer, but from somewhere behind my left shoulder. It sounded like it was right up against my ear. It said, "We almost had you on the road." I jerked back so hard I nearly fell. The footsteps inside the hallway did not slow. They kept coming, a rush of sound, but the silhouette did not change size or shape. It was like distance meant nothing in there. The pressure in my chest turned to full-on panic. I slammed the door with my shoulder, harder than I needed to. It shut with a dull boom. The knocking hit it instantly from the inside, 3 times, so hard I thought the metal would bend. The voice screamed once, high and full of something like anger or frustration. But it was not the voice of a child anymore. It had something doubled in it, like 2 voices trying to speak at the same time. The lot lights flickered then, all of them, buzzing louder. For a second it got so dark I could not see my own hands. In that darkness I felt a hand touch the back of my neck. Small, cool, not hurting me, just resting there like someone was measuring me. My whole spine froze. The lights snapped back on. There was nothing behind me. The trailer sat there, door shut, the seam around it clean and tight like it had never moved. I did not bother with dignity that time. I ran. I'm not ashamed to say it. I sprinted across the lot, jumped into my truck, dropped the transmission into drive without fully shutting the door, and took off. Gravel pinged against the underside. I did not look back until I was on the highway, and even then, I only flicked my eyes to the mirror once. The rest stop was a shrinking patch of yellow against the dark. No trailer, no van, just the bathroom block and the tables and the tall buzzing lights. The van that had sparked the call was gone, like it had never been there. My tablet pinged as I drove, loud enough to make me jump. I looked at it. The call I had just gone to was gone from the list. No completed ticket, no open request. It was as if dispatch had never sent it. In its place was a generic message saying coverage suspended on that stretch due to road closure. The road was not closed, I was driving it. I did not finish my shift. I radioed in and said I was sick, that I needed to come back. My voice sounded thin and far away in my own ears, but the dispatcher just said, "Okay, bring the truck in." No questions, no comments. Like they were relieved to get me off that highway. At the yard, the supervisor took one look at me and told me to go home and sleep. He did not ask for details. I think he saw something in my face he did not want to hear about. I drove back to my little duplex, parked crooked in my own driveway, and sat there for a long time, staring at my front door. It is not red. It has never been red. But in the reflection on my windshield, for just a second, it looked like it was. Now, weeks later, I am still not right. I quit nights. They moved me to days with a pay cut. I took it. I told them it was because I was tired and my back hurt and I did not want to be out late anymore. The real reason is I will not be on those highways in the dark again. I cannot. I hear knocking in everything now. Someone drops something in the apartment upstairs and my heart jumps like I am back at that first trailer on the shoulder. The sound of a child playing in the next yard over makes my hands sweat. If someone knocks at my door after sunset, I do not answer. I sit there on the couch, lights off, pretending I am not home, while my heart pounds so loud I cannot hear the TV. I checked my phone pictures a few days after that rest stop. I do not remember taking any that night, but there were 3 new ones in my gallery. All 3 are of a trailer with a red door taken from different angles. The first looks like it is parked on the shoulder of 84. The second looks like it is in a field entrance. The third looks like it is backed up to a fence I swear I recognize from just outside town. In every picture, there are no tracks leading up to it. In every picture, if you zoom in on the door, the paint is a little blurred, like the camera lens could not quite focus on that color. When I swipe past those photos, my phone freezes for a second on 12:6, then corrects itself. I have tried deleting them. The phone says they are gone. Then, a day or 2 later, they are back in the recently added folder. I hear that voice in my dreams now, but it never says words there. It just knocks. 3 times, then 3 more, farther away, then 3 more, closer again. The sound echoes down a hallway I can never quite see. When I wake up, my front door is always shut, the chair still propped under the knob. My truck keys are where I left them. The world is normal. The sun comes up. I make eggs or toast or whatever I can keep down. I put on my gray shirt with the crooked stain or the new one with the straight patch. I drive roads that are crowded with people and traffic and noise. But every once in a while, out of the corner of my eye, I will see a flash of red by the side of the highway. Not a sign, not a gas can, not taillights, just a rectangle of color, wrong against the scrub and dirt. When I look straight at it, it is gone. The GPS will glitch for a second. The clock will pause and then jump. My fuel gauge will twitch. Little things, leaks in the edges of the world. I do not work night shifts anymore. I will not answer calls that route me anywhere near that dead stretch where I first saw it. I have started circling locations in the paper map that sits under my seat, marking places I felt that wrong cold air. There are more circles than I want there to be. They are not in a line. They do not follow one highway. They are scattered, like someone dropped pins with their eyes closed. I am telling you this at 3 in the morning, behind my own place, leaning against the dented side of my truck so my voice does not carry through the walls, talking into my phone like I am, leaving a message no one will check, my neighbors are asleep. The only light back here is from the security bulb over the alley and the faint glow from my own kitchen window. The air is dry and still. No storm, no fog. Cats fight somewhere 2 houses over. A few minutes ago, while I was sitting on my couch trying not to think about any of this, someone knocked at my front door. 3 times. Slow, steady. The chair under the knob jumped on the last one. I muted the TV and sat there holding my breath. No voice came. After a while, I worked up the nerve to stand and look through the peephole. There was nothing on the little concrete porch. No shadows, no shapes, just the railing and the night. When I stepped back from the door, the paint around the frame looked a shade darker for a second, like a color bleeding through from underneath. Red, if you want the truth. It faded before I could touch it. That is why I am out here now, in the half-dark, telling this to whoever finds it. I am not asking you to believe me. I am asking you to remember one thing the next time you are driving some empty Texas highway at night and you see a dull white trailer with a red door sitting just off the shoulder. No truck, no plate, no tracks. If you think you hear a kid's voice asking for help from inside, check your clock, check your fuel gauge. Look at the ground under the tires. If anything feels off, if the air smells like a freezer in the middle of a warm night, if the handle feels colder than it should under your hand, do not open the door. Because it is not stuck out there. It is not tied to 1 mile marker or one rest stop. It finds you. It waits for you to come back, even if you do not remember the first time. It wants you to step through, to follow that voice down a hallway that goes farther than any trailer could. And once you stand in that light, I do not think you come back to the same road. Maybe you think you do. Maybe you drive, you eat your gas station burritos, you punch your clock, you live your little life. But some part of you stays in that hallway, listening to footsteps that never get closer, knocking on a door that never opens all the way. I can feel it still, on the edge of everywhere I go, in the bathroom at work when the pipes knock, in the elevator at the clinic when it shudders between floors, in the hollow echo under the floor of my own trailer when I walk heavy. It is under things now, under the road, under my truck, under my bed. So if you ever hear 3 knocks where there should not be any, and a small voice asking for help when you cannot see anyone there, do me a favor. Do not answer it. Do not say you know it. Do not step toward the red door, no matter where it shows up. I almost did, and my life has not been the same since. I do not drive nights. I do not sleep right, and every time the clock says 12:06, I feel that cold hand on the back of my neck again, measuring me like it is checking if I am ready to try the hallway one more time. My name's Kyle Berryman. I'm from a little strip outside of Mathis, down by the lake, and I work as a deputy for Sandalora County, and I am telling you straight that what I am about to say is why I do not run night patrol anymore, why I do not sit inside a parked car with the engine running if I can help it, and why I check under my truck every single time before I get in, even in broad daylight, even just to move it a few feet. That day started so normal, it makes me sick now. I woke up at 5 because my back started hurting. Not from anything big, just from years of getting in and out of the cruiser with the belt on, and I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click every third turn, thinking about calling in for a later shift, but I did not. I got up, I fried 2 eggs and burned one side because I was scrolling my phone, and I wiped the plate with a piece of bread like I always do. I remember I was wearing my older uniform shirt because the good one still had a coffee stain from the week before, and my wife had not washed it yet. There was a loose thread on my left sleeve, and I kept meaning to cut it off. I kissed my little girl on the forehead. She was half asleep on the couch with cartoons on low, and she told me I smelled like bacon. It was 6:42 when I punched in at the station. I remember because the time clock was 3 minutes slow, and the sergeant always complained about it, but never called anybody to fix it. We had the usual briefing in that stale little room with the humming fluorescent lights and the one chair nobody sits in because the back is loose. We went over a couple of theft reports, some trespass calls out near the refinery road, and a cow that kept getting out on County Road 7. Nothing special. They gave me Unit 12 again. The black and white with the slight alignment, pull to the right, and the new radio that crackled less than the others. I signed the log, checked my shotgun in the rack, checked the trunk for flares, and the first aid kit. I always tap the trunk once with my knuckles before I close it. I do not even know when I started that habit, but I did it that morning too. There was nothing wrong with the weather, no storm, no fog, just clear sky and that dry kind of December air we get when the wind has been blowing out of the north for a while. It was busy enough during the day that I did not think about anything. I wrote a couple of tickets, checked on an old guy whose neighbor thought he had fallen, helped a lady who locked her keys in her car outside the grocery store. Normal stuff. I had lunch around 1, a cold bologna sandwich my wife wrapped in foil, and a little bag of those cheap chips that taste like salt and oil. I remember I spilled a few crumbs on my uniform and brushed them down between the seat and the console. A stupid detail, but that is how my brain is stuck on all of this. The shift change to nights was the part I always hated, because the station goes quiet, the day guys joke as they leave, and the sky outside that little side door goes from blue to that flat kind of dark where everything looks like a photograph. I picked up the night rotation because one of the younger guys had a dentist appointment the next morning and asked me to cover, and I said yes without thinking, just like that, just to be nice. If I had said no, I would not be talking to this phone right now. We rolled into night with nothing big on the board. I fueled up the cruiser at the county pumps, signed the clipboard, watched the numbers click on the old pump display, and I remember thinking how the diesel pump next to me always smelled stronger than the gasoline one. I was alone in the car for the night, which I actually liked most of the time. Our county is stretched thin. You drive long stretches of 2-lane roads with nothing but fields and a few houses with one light on. The radio chatter slows down after 10. You hear the same voices checking in, doing traffic stops, calling clear, making bad jokes when it is slow. I had a coffee from the gas station just off the highway, the one that is like 5 miles from the line and always has those stale donuts in the glass case. I paid cash, stuck the receipt in the visor like I always do, and got back on Patrol Route C, the loop that takes you along 281 for a stretch and then back through the farm roads. At 11:38, I remember because I checked the clock, dispatch called out that Unit 7 had not cleared from a vehicle assist over on Farm to Market 2148. That is a long, thin road, nothing on it but a few oil field turnouts and a closed-down produce stand. The call came out like it always does, calm voice, just business. Unit 7, status check. No reply. A few seconds, then again, a little firmer. 7, radio check. Another few seconds, then dispatch called my unit and said, 12, you near 2148? I said I was about 10 minutes out, heading southbound on 281. She told me Unit 7 had cleared his last traffic, but his MDC still had him out on that assist and he was not answering his radio. She sounded bored more than worried. Radios cut out all the time. People step away from the car and forget. I said I would head that way. That was the trigger, man. That was where everything started to tilt. I took the next crossover and got on 2148. That road always feels longer at night. There are no real landmarks, just those little green mile markers and the occasional reflector on a fence post, and your headlights make a tunnel out of the dark. I remember glancing at my fuel gauge out of habit, 3/4 of a tank, no issues. I keyed up and said, dispatch 12 en route to check on 2148 eastbound from 281. She acknowledged, her voice a little more alert now, I guess because if she had sent someone to check, then it was official. As I drove, I kept expecting to see the glow of his light bar up ahead, or the red dot of his taillights, something, but it was just black and the yellow lines. I had the radio low, that soft hiss and crackle, and my own engine sound, and the hum of the tires. I am telling you, there was nothing spooky about it then. It was just another check the box call. I passed mile marker 12, then 13, then 14. His last reported location had been around 15. I remember feeling a little annoyed, thinking he had probably gone to the bathroom in the bushes and left his radio in the car. You think petty stuff like that even when you are wearing a badge. After a few minutes, I saw the reflection first. 2 bright white ovals in the distance, not moving, just sitting there. Then I made out the shape. Unit 7 was parked not the way we are trained to park, not angled onto the shoulder, not pulled off the lane, but dead center of the right side of the road, straddling the white line, facing my direction, driver's side a little canted like he had stopped too fast and not straightened out. His overheads were not on just his low beams and running lights, but they looked too bright in the dark, like they were the only real thing on the whole road. I slowed, flipped on my rear amber lights, and stopped a good car length behind him. The weird thing, the first wrong detail that stuck in my mind, was that his driver's door was closed. If you are out of your unit on a dark road, you either leave it open a crack or you are standing right by it. The car was running. I could see the exhaust coming out the back in a faint, steady trail. It was in park. I could see the reverse lights were off. No one was moving inside. I called out on the radio, dispatch, 12. I have visual on 7's unit, 2148 near mile 15. Vehicle is occupied 0 times at this time, engine running. I will be out on foot. She said, copy, 12, out with 7's unit, nothing special. My hand brushed that loose thread on my sleeve when I reached for the door handle, and that stupid feeling went through me like I should have cut it this morning. I stepped out. The air hit me colder than I expected. There was that high, thin kind of wind that makes the grass along the ditch whisper, but you do not feel it strong on your skin. You just hear it. Another little wrong thing. I could not hear any animals. No crickets, no frogs, no distant dogs, nothing. Just the engine of Unit 7 idling steady and my own hair in my ears. I shut my door, but not all the way, left it on the latch so the dome light would not come on, and clicked my flashlight on. The beam looked weak against the headlights in front of me, like they were washing out my light. I walked up along the driver's side of my car, checked the road, and started toward his rear bumper. I called his name once, not over the radio, just into the night, the way you do. Hey, Calderon, you good? No answer. I tried to tell myself he was just off in the brush, taking a leak. Still, the hair on my arm stood up. I thought of our training. Approach cautiously, check interior, maintain awareness. I put my hand on my gun without pulling it, just because that is what you do when you feel your stomach drop and you do not know why. As I got closer, I saw the light from his dashboard glowing through the windshield, that sickly green and orange of the speedometer and radio panel. His spotlight was off, the rear plate light was on. There were no skid marks before the car, no sign of a sudden stop, no other vehicle, nothing. It was like somebody had picked him up and placed him there like a toy. I walked to the driver's side first and shined my light in. The seat was empty. The belt hung loose against the pillar. I looked at the steering wheel. His little rubber steering wheel cover with the Longhorn logo was there. The same coffee stain on the cup holder. His half-finished bottle of water in the console. The radio stretched up on its mount. His hat was on the passenger seat, upside down, like he had just tossed it there. The dashcam indicator light was on. That little red LED, that means it is recording. The screen showed the road in front of the car, a frozen frame of blacktop, and the faint glow of his headlights. There was nothing in it. That was normal. What was not normal was the radio. It hissed like they do when the squelch is open, but nobody was talking. It was the kind of hiss you usually only hear if you turn the volume all the way up with no channel selected. I checked it with my eyes. The knob was in the usual spot. Not too loud, not muted. It was on our dispatch channel. The hiss sounded wrong, like there was something underneath it that I could not quite catch, like when people talk in another room and you only hear the tone. I walked around to the passenger side, shining my light in again, looking for any sign of struggle, any blood, any scuff marks, anything. The floor was clean, except for a fast food napkin and a pen. I checked the back seat. Empty, cage intact, no one stuffed on the floor or lying across the bench. I know that sounds ridiculous, but we are taught to look. The trunk was closed. I hesitated before I checked it, hand on the latch, because some part of my brain started whispering that if I opened it and something was wrong, I could not put it back. It is strange what your mind says to you in those moments. I opened it anyway. It popped up smooth, same as mine. Flares, shotgun shells, toolkit, reflective triangles. No person, no sign he had even opened it wherever he stopped. That was when I keyed up again. Dispatch, 12. She came back. Go ahead, 12, I said. 7's unit is here, vehicle is running, but officer is not on scene. I am going to secure the car and check the immediate area, she said. And I remember the exact words because they replay in my head. Copy, 12. Be advised, CAD still shows Unit 7 in service. Last status clear at 22:49 on a motor assist. No further calls after that. That did not match what I was seeing, but it was not impossible. Sometimes the CAD lags and does not show an officer out on a call. I asked her, "You got his last GPS ping?" She said, "Affirmative. Last ping 13 minutes ago. Location shows 2,148 near mile 15. That your location? 12? I looked at the mile marker just ahead in my light. It said 17. I said, "Negative, dispatch. I am at 17. There was this tiny pause. Copy, 12. Stand by. The hiss in his radio got louder right then. I swear to you it did. Like someone had turned the knob, but it had not moved. I looked at it, watched the little backlight, saw the display flicker for just a second, like the characters blurred. That is when I heard it for the first time. Not over my shoulder, not in my head, but right out of the speaker in Unit 7. It was a voice under the hiss, low, like somebody too far from the microphone, but clear enough that my body reacted before the words even made sense. Every muscle in my back went tight. It said, "He is underneath." Just that. Calm, like a statement, like someone reading off a plate number. He is underneath. The hair on my neck prickled so hard it hurt. I thought it was dispatch playing a trick for half a second, which makes no sense, but your mind will reach for anything normal. I keyed my own radio. "Dispatch, did you copy any traffic from 7's unit?" My voice shook, and I hated that. She said, "Negative, 12. I do not show any transmissions from 7. You transmitting from your unit or his?" I said, "Mine." She said, "Copy. I have you on airway. No other units." I looked at the dash of Unit 7 again, that red LED still steady, and my own reflection in the window with my flashlight. I told myself it was some kind of bleed, some weird interference. Another station, some trucker, kids with a radio scanner, anything. People hear stuff like that sometimes. I forced myself to move, to do what I said I was going to do. I shined my light up and down the road, into the ditches, across the scrub. "Calderon, if you can hear me, answer." I called, louder now. No sound came back, not even the echo you sometimes get out there. Just the faint engine rumble and that ugly hiss out of his radio. When I started to walk past the front of his car to check the far side of the ditch, my light hit the pavement just in front of his bumper, and I saw something that did not fit. There were marks on the road, but not like skid marks or shoe prints. They were long, thin streaks running parallel, like something had dragged along the asphalt, starting directly under his front bumper and extending out about 6 or 7 feet, and then stopping dead. They were too narrow for tire tracks, too straight and clean for anything like a rope. They looked like 2 lines burned, just a shade darker than the road itself. I crouched down without even meaning to, shining my light close. The asphalt was not gouged. It was smooth. It just looked like the color had changed in those 2 strips, like it had gotten wet and then dried almost instantly. There was no smell, no oil, nothing you could touch. My brain filed it under weird but not dangerous because the rest of me did not want to think about what could make marks like that from underneath a car. That was when the radio spoke again. "He is underneath." Same tone, same rhythm, same voice. I straightened up so fast, I almost dropped my light. This time I watched the radio as it said it. The display did not change. The light did not blink like it does when someone keys up. The little orange transmit icon never came on. It was like the sound was there without the equipment doing anything. I took a step back from the open driver's window. I cannot explain that feeling properly. It was like the space in the car was occupied all of a sudden, like someone had just slid into the empty seat and you could not see them, but your body knew. I kept my eyes on the ground because I did not want to see anything in the mirror or the glass. I told myself, "All right, fine. Under the car then? Maybe he crawled under there. Maybe he is hurt. Maybe there is a leak. Maybe that is what this is." You cling to the job to keep from bolting. I knelt down by the front wheel, my knees popping a little, the way they do when you have been on your feet all day. I angled my flashlight under the bumper. All I saw at first were the usual things: the oil pan, the cross member, the shadow of the engine block, that low-hanging plastic guard that always scrapes on curbs. The idling made the whole underside vibrate slightly. There was nothing else, just dark space and the shimmering heat from the exhaust. I almost laughed at myself, like, "See, you are just spooked because the guy is missing." Then, in that narrow circle of light, something shifted that did not match the rhythm of the engine. It was subtle, like when you see a spider move at the edge of your vision. Deep in the middle, somewhere behind the front wheels, there was a patch of shadow that did not match the others. It was flatter, stretched, like something lying tight against the frame. At first I thought it was a piece of plastic sheeting caught up there. Then the radio, right above my head, said it again, but with one extra word this time. "He is underneath you." I jerked so hard I smacked the back of my head on the bumper. Pain flashed across my scalp. My flashlight skittered out of my hand, rolled in a slow circle, and for a second the beam spun across the underside of the car in a way that made all the shadows move. That darker patch in the center seemed to slide, not drop or bounce, but slide, like it was pinned to the chassis and unpeeling. It elongated toward the front of the car, thin and deliberate. I did not see a face. I did not see eyes. I want to be clear about that. If I had seen a face, I think I would have gone insane on the spot. What I saw were limb shapes, if you can call them that, but too long, too flat, not bending where things bend. They moved soundlessly, hand over hand if they were hands, hooking along the undercarriage faster than any person could move in a space that tight. The weight of the car did not shift, the suspension did not bounce. There was no noise except the engine and the hiss of the radio. Something slid from the center line toward where my head had just been, hugging the metal as if there was no friction. I heard my own breath choke. I scrambled backward on my hands and heels, boots scraping the pavement, and my heel hit one of those darker lines on the road. For a second, it felt colder than the asphalt around it, like a strip of metal in winter. By the time I got upright, my flashlight had come to a stop between the two cars, pointing back at Unit 7's grill. The beam caught the underside again, and for one heartbeat, I saw it more clearly. It was like a man flattened by pressure. If a man could be stretched so thin, his arms were longer than his whole body, with joints in the wrong places and no thickness at all. It clung to the chassis with those long fingers, but the fingers did not curl the right way. They seemed to reach in more directions than there should have been. It pulled itself toward the front and then down, as if gravity changed for it, and the underside of the car was no longer up, but sideways. And in that same moment, the radio in my own cruiser, behind me, not the one in Unit 7, came alive with that same voice, closer, clearer, like it was speaking right into my ear through a headset I was not wearing. "He is underneath you, Kyle." Hearing my name took my knees out. I did not remember telling dispatch my first name. I do not know who all knows it on the air. It does not matter. That is the thing that broke whatever part of me still thought this could be a prank or some weird interference. Something knew my name and was choosing to say it that way. I turned, I did not even decide to, my body just did, half expecting to see someone standing between the cars with a mic, some idiot playing around. There was nobody. My unit sat there with its doors closed, its own engine idling, my headlights casting their own tunnel into the dark behind me. I could see my reflection faint in my windshield, a shape in a uniform holding nothing. The radio on my dash had its display calm as always. No transmit icon, no blinking, just the channel number. The voice had come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Behind me, metal popped. You know that ticking sound cars make as they cool, except this one was running hot. It was a sharp, hollow thunk from underneath Unit 7, like something hard had struck the frame from the inside. Then another, closer to the front. The whole car did not rock, but the front bumper shifted down a hair, like weight had transferred. The long shadows under the grille moved out past where I could see onto the pavement just below the bumper. Something was crawling out. I told my legs to move and they did not. I am not proud of that. I stood there in the wash of the headlights, hand on my gun, but I did not draw it. There was a sick understanding in my gut that it would not matter. Bullets are for things with bodies the way we understand them. This was something else. The first part of it that emerged under the bumper looked like a pair of arms reaching, except they were too long and came out side by side, flat against the road, elbows bending out instead of up. The fingers, if that is what they were, spread wide and stayed pressed to the pavement, as if they were testing it, feeling it. The whole surface of it was dark, not black exactly, but the color of the road when headlights hit it after rain, even though the night was dry. It pulled the rest of itself out in a slow, patient motion. There was no scrape, no rustle, nothing. Just that soft hiss from the radio and my own pulse in my ears. Where its head should be, there was only a rounded, smooth shape, like a helmet that had been squashed. It did not look at me. It did not need to. I knew it knew I was there because of what it did next. It paused, halfway out, so most of its length still hugged the bottom of the car, and it reached one arm, or whatever, toward the empty space between my unit and Seven's. It touched the faint mark on the road, the same kind I had felt under my heel. The pavement under its hand darkened for a second, like something was soaking in. Then that dark spread in two straight lines toward my feet, so fast my brain hardly processed it. It was like watching a shadow race toward you, with no object casting it. At the same time, both radios, my unit and Seven's, spoke together, not over each other, not echoing with a delay, but perfectly in sync. The same words, same tone, like a recording played on two systems at once. "He is underneath you." My legs finally obeyed. I stepped back so hard I almost tripped over the crown of the road. I wanted to look down to see if those dark lines had reached my boots, but I could not make myself. I stared straight ahead at that thing under the cruiser as it finished crawling free. It never really lifted itself off the pavement. It slid, like it had more contact with the ground than it should have, as if its whole body was made to be underneath things, not on top. It kept its arms, or whatever, wide and flat, as if feeling out how far its reach could go without lifting. It moved past the front bumper and out into the beam of my headlights, and my brain refused to give it details. It just kept throwing up words like wrong and flat and long. It stopped once it was fully clear, lying there like a shadow that had thickened. For a second, the radio went completely silent. No hiss, no background chatter, nothing. Even the engine sounds seemed to fade. There was this hole of quiet that made my eardrums strain. Then, from somewhere that did not match any direction, like it was coming from the pavement under my boots, and from the roof of the car, and from inside my chest, all at the same time, I heard the same voice again. Not through the speakers, not through any device, just in the air. He is underneath. Only this time, there was no you or he. It was like a statement of fact about the world itself. I took another step back, and my shoulder hit my own unit. The touch of the metal against my uniform snapped some other, older training into place, the part that says, remove yourself from danger, regroup, call for backup. I yanked my door open and slid in, half falling, and hit the lock button out of reflex, like that would matter. My hands shook so bad I almost dropped the mic when I grabbed it. Dispatch, 12. I need additional units to my location immediately, I said. My voice did not sound like mine. It sounded higher, thin. Officer is missing. I have a situation out here that I cannot explain. That is the closest I could come to saying there is something in the road that should not exist. She came back fast this time. All business, no boredom. Copy 12, additional units en route. Confirm mile marker. I looked past the thing in front of me for the sign. It should have been just ahead, just like before. It was not there. There was nothing but road and darkness. I am between 15 and 17, I said, because that is what it had been a minute ago. I do not see a sign. She said, copy 12. Last GPS ping shows you at mile 9. That did something to my head I cannot describe. I knew I had not turned around. I knew there had been no curves, no side roads. I had not driven anywhere. I was still behind Unit 7. But the system thought I was miles back from where I had been. At the same time, I looked at my digital clock on the dash. When I had first pulled up, it had been just after midnight. Now it said 3:27. I had not been out of the car more than 10 minutes. I have gone over that again and again. The dash cam footage from my own unit, what little there is, says the same thing the clock did. There is a jump, a cut, a slice of time missing. I did not know that part yet, though. In that moment, sitting there gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt, all I had was the numbers and the wrong mile, and the weight of my own body screaming at me to get away. Out in front, in the shared light of both cruisers, the thing lay still. It had not moved while I scrambled into my car. It was like it was waiting. The radio stayed silent. My own breathing sounded too loud in the cab. Then my dashcam indicator light flickered. It went off, then on, then off again. The screen glitched, lines of static rolling over the image of the road, and for a brief second, the reflection in the windshield changed. I could see myself, of course, pale and wide-eyed, but behind my shoulder, in the back seat of my own unit, there was a shape that was darker than the darkness. Not a person sitting upright, more like something pressed against the back of the cage, stretched across it, arms extended along the top edge like it was bracing. It was there and gone in less than a heartbeat. Just a smear of something that did not belong, but my brain grabbed it and has not let it go since. The dashcam light went solid again. The screen showed only the empty road and the back of Unit 7. I am telling you, man, I am telling you, as clear as I can, I did not imagine that. The next sound that came was not from the radios. It was from underneath my own car. A single, heavy thump right under my feet, like somebody had balled up a fist and hit the floor from below. The steering wheel shook in my hands. The pedals jumped. My whole body flinched. Then, very slowly, The back of my seat pushed forward a fraction, as if something had pressed against it from behind and then settled back again. There was no weight reading on the sensors. My seatbelt did not tighten, but my body knew something had touched the same structure it was attached to. I did the only thing my frightened idiot brain could come up with. I threw the car into reverse and hit the gas. The engine roared. The cruiser jumped backward. I did not look behind me, which is against everything we are taught, but I could not take my eyes off the thing in front of me. As I backed up, it did not turn or pivot like a person would. It did not even lift its head. It just slid, pivoting around some invisible point, staying exactly the same distance from my front bumper as if we were connected by a rod. The lines under it stretched and shortened with the movement, never breaking. It was like I could not increase the space between us. No matter how far I backed up, it stayed at that same distance, right at the edge of my headlights, flat to the pavement, arms wide. The mile marker signs did not appear. The roadside did not change. It was the same patch of nothing repeated. The panic that rolled through me then was like drowning. I threw it into drive and lurched forward. Same thing. It retreated at the same pace, never more, never less, like it was fixed on the tape in front of me. The two long, dark streaks on the road, the ones that had started under Unit 7, now extended under my own car, moving with me, as if my wheels were on rails I could not feel. My stomach flipped. I slammed the brakes. The cruiser skidded to a halt. The seatbelt dug into my chest. The thing stopped exactly when I did, still at that same distance, still stretched out on the pavement like it had not exerted itself at all. My radio clicked. No hiss, no voice, just that little sound it makes when someone keys up and does not speak. Then, so soft I might have missed it, if I had been breathing any louder, there was a whisper. Not the same voice as before. This one sounded like Calderon. I know his voice. I have had coffee with him. I have watched games with him in the break room. It was him. "Do not get out," he said. That was it. 3 words. It was not a transmission anybody else heard. Dispatch did not ask who was stepping on their mic. There was no carrier signal. It was like the air in front of my face shaped itself into his voice just for me. I sat there frozen, hands on the wheel, eyes burning. I wanted to answer him, to ask where he was, what was happening, but my throat had locked. My phone buzzed in my pocket at that exact moment, and I almost screamed. I yanked it out with one hand, still watching the thing, and saw my wife's name on the screen. It said the call had ended just as I looked. The timestamp said she had called 2 hours ago. I had not felt it. The battery indicator flickered between 70% and 10 in the space of a blink, then settled on 52. Little stupid details. They add up. The next time the voice spoke, it was back to that first one, the one that liked that phrase. This time it came from everywhere again, only the words changed. You are underneath. Not he, not it, you. The pronoun shift hit harder than anything. My chest tightened. I felt this pressure under the car, under my seat, this sense that the entire world above the pavement was just a thin shell, and the real space, the deeper part, was below, and something that belonged there was looking up, waiting for cracks. I do not know how long I sat like that. The dash clock jumped again at some point. One moment it said 3:29, the next it said 4:12. There was no fade, no steady ticking through those minutes, just a cut. When the first backup unit finally arrived, I did not see it approach. 1 second, there was only my headlights and that thing. The next second, red and blue strobes exploded in my mirrors and washed the road. The thing was gone. There was nothing in front of me but Unit 7 parked where it had been. Only this time it was properly angled to the shoulder, like a textbook traffic stop position. The 2 long dark streaks on the road were shorter, ending just beneath his bumper, and my own car sat a good 10 yards behind him instead of pressed close like it had been. My brain tried to rewrite the last hour in a rush, telling me I had imagined it, that I had dozed off, that I had had some kind of episode. But when I stepped out, because now with other people there I could move, I saw quick that the story was not going to be that simple. The backup deputy, Merritt, climbed out of his unit with that usual big grin on his face he always had when he thought a call might be nothing. It faded when he saw me. "You look like death, man," he said. "You all right?" His words sounded muffled. I nodded because I did not have an answer that made sense. Dispatch came on, confirming our units, sounding relieved. Within the next half hour, we had 3 more cars out there, the sergeant, and then eventually the rangers when they realized an officer was gone. They searched the ditches, the fences, the fields, with dogs and thermal cameras. Helicopter later that morning, they found nothing. No footprints, no drag marks, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Just an empty cruiser with the engine still warm and the dash cam that should have shown the whole road the entire time. The dash cam footage from Unit 7, when they pulled it, was wrong in a way that made my skin crawl. It showed him driving down 2,148, responding to the motorist assist. He pulled up behind a pickup with its hood up. He got out, walked to the driver's window of the truck, talked to someone we never see because the camera angle misses it. Then he came back to his car, sat down, said something into the radio we cannot hear because the audio clipped for some reason, and then he looked up sharply, like someone had tapped on his window. He opened his door, stepped out, and vanished from the frame before the door had even swung wide. I do not mean he walked out of the frame. I mean one frame he is there, the next he is gone, and the door is in a slightly different position, as if time had stuttered. After that, the car just sits there. At some point, the truck in front of him is no longer in the footage. It does not drive away. It is just gone between frames. The timestamp on the video jumps 3 times in the next hour, the same way my dash clock did. There is a segment, about 9 minutes long according to the timestamp, where the picture goes completely black even though the indicator light says it is recording and the car does not move. When the picture comes back, the car is in the middle of the road instead of at the shoulder, straight instead of angled, and the motorist truck is gone. That is the position I found it in. They asked me to write a report, of course. They sat me in that little room with the bad coffee and the buzzing light and told me to start from the beginning. I gave them the breakfast, the briefing, the call, the drive. I gave them the empty car, the missing officer, the strange voice on the radio, in the most normal words I could. I did not tell them at first about what I saw under the cruiser. I told myself I was protecting my job, my badge, my sanity. When I got to the part about the wrong mile marker and the time jumps, they exchanged looks I am not supposed to see. They told me radios glitch, GPS pings bounce off towers, clocks malfunction. They asked if I had been feeling stressed, if I had slept all right, if I had any family history of fainting spells. I sat there with my hands on the table and felt that same hollow under me that I had felt on the road. After about 10 minutes of that, I told them the rest, because the lie felt worse than whatever they would think. I told them about the voice using my name, about the thing sliding out from under the car, about it seeming to keep pace with my cruiser even when I drove, about the whisper that sounded like Calderon telling me not to get out. The room changed. The sergeant's face went blank in that way. That means he is shutting down. The ranger, who had been leaning back in his chair, sat forward, not because he believed me, but because now he had a problem he could label. They asked if I had been drinking, which offended me on some level, below the fear. They asked if I had ever had hallucinations before. They asked if I wanted to talk to someone. They did not put any of that in the official report. On paper, it says, I responded to a welfare check on a fellow officer, found his unit running and unoccupied, secured the scene, requested backup, and assisted with the initial search. It mentions that I reported a possible radio interference and a discrepancy with the GPS, underlined as technical issues to be forwarded to IT. It does not mention the words, he is underneath, even once. The dashcam footage from my own unit, which should have shown that whole thing in front of my car, including whatever I saw or thought I saw, crawl out, got corrupted. That is the word they used. The first 15 minutes are clear, then there is a block of static and digital smear for about 32 minutes. Then the picture comes back and shows my car already parked, my headlights on, and then the arrival of the first backup unit. The audio track for that whole missing block is just the sound of my engine and a faint hiss. If you listen with headphones, really close, turned up too loud, there is a point right in the middle where the hiss dips, and under it, you can hear a voice. I've played it for myself so many times that I might be making it up now, but I swear you can hear it. It is a breath that is almost a word, like the start of that same phrase. It never gets all the way through. It stops right between the syllables. After that night, I lasted exactly 3 more shifts on nights. The first one, I could barely force myself to drive under overpasses. Every time I did, my hands went slick, and I had to check my rearview mirror twice to make sure there was not something flattened against the inside of my back window. I started hearing little knocks while I drove, tiny sounds from the floorboard, from inside the door panels, from the trunk. Every time I pulled over to check, there was nothing. The second shift, I had a simple noise complaint at a trailer park on the edge of town. When I pulled up, a kid had his music up loud in a car with the doors open. I walked up, tapped the roof to get his attention. The bass coming out of his speakers made my chest vibrate. For 1 second, underneath the beat, the song dropped out, and all I could hear was that hiss and the voice saying underneath stretched out, not as words, just the sound pattern. I stepped back so fast the kid thought I was mad at him and started apologizing. I wrote him a warning and left, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The third shift, I was sitting at the station parking lot before roll call, engine running, looking at my reflection in the glass doors, and I realized I could not make myself put the car in drive. I could not make myself spend another 8 hours in a box of metal that could be sitting on top of that thing like a coffin lid at any second, whether I knew it or not. So I went inside, went past the briefing room, and knocked on the captain's door. I told him I wanted off nights. I told him I did not care if they put me on desk duty, on evidence, on school visits, on whatever. I just did not want to be the one driving dark roads alone anymore. He looked at me like he was trying to decide if I was broken or just tired. He agreed faster than I expected. Maybe he saw something in my face. Now I work days, mostly paperwork and some courtroom runs. People joke that I got soft. I let them. I do not tell them that when I park my personal truck at home, I choose spots with gravel instead of asphalt because I want to hear it crunch if anything moves under me. I do not tell them that I cannot sit in any vehicle, even as a passenger, without glancing down between my feet at least once to make sure the floor looks solid. My wife noticed I sleep with my feet tucked up now, not hanging off the mattress. She thinks it is a new quirk. I have not told her why. Our little girl likes to lie on her stomach and slide under the couch, pretend she is a monster hiding. The first time she did it after that night, I grabbed her ankles and pulled her out so hard she cried, and my wife yelled at me. I apologized, held them both, told them I was just startled. Now I cannot be in the room when she plays that game. I find errands to run. I volunteer for grocery duty. Anything not to see that little pair of legs disappear under furniture. A couple months after Calderon disappeared, I ran into his wife at the store. She had their boy with her in the cart. She asked me, because she knew I was the one who found his car, if I thought he suffered. What do you say to that? I told her no. I told her whatever happened, it was quick, that he probably did not even know. She cried anyway, right there between the cereal and the canned soup. I stood there holding a box of coffee filters and wanted to tell her there is a worse thing than suffering, and that is knowing you are somewhere you are not supposed to be, somewhere no one can reach you, and feeling something slide along underneath you waiting for you to notice. But I kept my mouth shut. I am telling you instead into this cracked phone at 3 a.m. behind my rusted out trailer while the highway hums in the distance. I know how it sounds. I know what it makes me. I am not asking you to believe in monsters or in anything supernatural. I am telling you that there is a space under the things we trust, under our roads and our floors and our routines, and that night it opened up just enough to show me that something else uses it. We spend our lives on top of it, thin as we are, thinking the ground is solid. It is not. Something is underneath. And if you ever drive alone out on 2148, or any road like it, with no houses in sight and no animals making noise, and your radio suddenly goes quiet when it should not, and your headlights feel like they are hitting something that is not there, do yourself a favor. Do not stop in the middle of the lane. Do not get out without checking where your feet are going to land. And if you hear that little whisper, whether it comes from the speaker or from the space under your seat or from the back of your own head, saying, "He is underneath," or "You are underneath," believe it, because whatever I saw that night does not care about our reports or our rules or our clocks. It only cares that there is always something above it, walking and driving and lying in bed, and that eventually, for someone, somewhere, the roles are going to switch.